Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers to save his mother. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. What If Natsu had dual elements will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. I'd love to do another poll to decide our next project, but unfortunately, due to my travel plans, I won't be able to start a new series until the end of December if we go that route. So instead, I've decided that the series which came in second place in the last poll will be our next project. That means the series replacing What If Natsu Had Dual Elements will be What If Transmigrated into One Piece and Became a Marine? Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 66, The First Move. Royal Realm, Houden. Fancy Club, Crappy Little Shack. Ichigo said, comparing the two main sites of Otsu's city. The first was a bright and flashy building that seemed like a massive hostess club than anything else and filled with girls to enforce that idea. Otsu was trying to start a party before Ichigo noted how lonely the guy was, considering all of the girls were Zanpakuto. The next 5 minutes was spent trying to get the master bladesmith to stop crying until a red-haired girl named Mara kicked him in his head and dragged them to said crappy little shack at the edge of a cliff, the real residence of the blade god. I'm not sure whether to feel sorry or not. The girls seemed fun though. Oraheim chimed in, already heading toward the small building. But if he does control this entire area, why doesn't he just move into that place and make this one strictly a forge? She suggested, prompting the two to look at the Zero Squad member. Because I live in my forge, the Blade Master admitted as he finally started to act serious. Helps me feel connected to the Zanpakuto. A true master devotes everything to his craft. He stood next to the opening and pulled the curtain away. Inside, you'll find Dash. That was irritating. The smith heard someone growl. He turned to Zangetsu to pull himself out of the building. All this trouble for your actual blade and you did nothing. He scowled at Ichigo who shrugged. That was the weird thing, I couldn't find you precisely. Ichigo returned as Zangetsu went to stand by his master's side. Otsu kept staring at Zangetsu before looking into his palace. I may have my work cut out for me this time, he thought before revealing the water slide path. Alright Ichi, Ori, down here. The two looked down into the slide before Oraheim dived in, laughing the whole way. Ichigo shook his head before following with Zangetsu close behind, finishing with Otsu. The ride went by quickly, with Ichigo snatching his girlfriend before they landed in the pool. The end. Come on boy. That's the best part of the ride, the smith said, before realizing he was being ignored for his forge. A massive cascading waterfall and a natural stone pillar with a hollow recess in it. Alright, time to get this show on the road, he yelled as 5 girls popped out of nowhere and hit him, 1 strike for each. Nemea's private escort group is in the hizzy. The blonde girl cheered. With her was Mara, 2 black-haired girls with one seeming worried while the other seemed covered in bandages, and a little kid. Oraheim was clapping excitedly for the performance. Ichigo and Zangetsu were watching in disbelief. Do you really need a real Zanpakuto? Zangetsu asked, Ichigo honestly considering they just leave. Before a decision could be made, he dematerialized into a white bar of whatever the material Otsu used was called. Mara lit the forge, the blonde girl grabbed the blade. With her hair, the depressed girl and kid filled a quench tank, while the bandage girl pulled out a tooth and made it into a mallet. Otsu himself tied up his hair and took off his sunglasses, took up the mallet and began to hammer away at the bar. With nothing else to do but wait, Ichigo sat and meditated while listening to the clangs of the hammer. Karakura battles, Isshin vs Grimmjow. Seal release. Isshin called out, his Shihakusho in tatters from his fight. Grimmjow was only slightly better, but knew the captain was holding back because of the seals captains and lieutenants have to wear. My son is stronger, but I'm still a captain of the Gotii, he reminded before flashing in front of the errand car and flicking his forehead. The attack struck like a high-impact cannon and sent him flying through the air, colliding with other hollows before righting himself out and ready to charge back at the captain. He sensed Ishin appearing right behind him, ready to cleave through his back and ending the fight before Grimmjow barely blocked with his own sword. "Grind, Pantera!" The Arrancar called out, placing his nails on the flat of his blade before clawing down the length. The sudden burst of Racier forced Ishin back as gusts of wind clouded Grimmjow from view. When the dust settled, it revealed the Arrancar with long hair, cat ears, a long white tail, and segmented body armor with blade extending from his calves and elbows. "That's fine with me. I'll get even stronger and grind that punk's head into the dirt." The panther roared before clashing with Ishin once again, but, despite the added strength and agility, Ishin was still capable of keeping up and dominating the fight. "Getsuga Tensho!" He called out, getting behind the panther and striking him with the concentrated wave of Racier. The force of the attack gouged out and scarred the land, destroying most of the park and severely damaging the containment barrier around the park. When the dust settled, Grimmjow was covered in slow healing burns and started to stagger. "You're holding back," Ishin stated, knowing how much stronger Grimmjow got. "I thought you'd know better than that." "I'm saving that for my rematch against that kid of yours," Grimmjow said with a savage, pointing his elbow at Ishin before appearing in front of him. "Garra de la Pantera!" he shouted, shooting Ishin point blank in the stomach with his green explosive stone bullets. The explosion covered them both in smoke and dust before Grimmjow was sent flying back, spinning from the force of a punch. "That better be one hell of an ace," the father said as he rubbed his torso, "'cause you'll need a lot more than that, a hell of a lot more, to challenge Ichigo." "Burn, Enjetsu," he said, letting his Racier become the fires surrounding his sword. "Now show me what you've got," he roared as the two charged at each other once more. "Royal Realm, Huden." The repeated clangs of the hammer on the blade were the only sound the hybrid heard as he meditated, waiting for the moment when Zangetsu would truly be completed. A part of him wondered why it was taking so long, expecting a near-instantaneous crafting with minimal effort, but Otsu was starting to drip with sweat and his breath becoming labored. Nevertheless, the hammer kept striking in the rings, becoming more melodious until the moment came. "Ichigo!" Zangetsu called out to him, making Ichigo's eyes snap open. The bright burning flames were being consumed by the darkness that was emanating from Zangetsu's form, needing one last ingredient to finish the blades. He flashed to his Zanpakuto and plunged his hands into the flames, the protest of the other Zanpakuto falling on deaf ears as Ichigo poured his Racier into the blades. Otsu merely smiled as Ichigo pulled the blades free and all the spirit water evaporated. His waterfalls, the sea, the very moisture from the air, and the blades were still burning hot in the boy's hands. "Damn, and here I thought I've seen it all," the smith thought as the blades in Ichigo's hands radiated power before settling down into the Kyber and trench blade combo. "Well kid, my work here with you is done. You should head on to the Monk City if you wanted to pick up some extra techniques," he suggested as he staggered slightly. "I need to get myself a bite to eat. You wanna come with? I'll explain what we need to do," he asked Oraheim, who got up and followed while cradling the broken and whole Muramasa blades. "Is crafting a Zanpakuto really that hard?" Oraheim asked, feeling respect for the smith considering how draining it was to craft Zangetsu. "You go through that every time?" "Hell no, that blade was insane," Otsu yelled out as they reached the launch pad. "Every other blade I made was easy, even my sharpest blade, compared to that thing," he explained, just as they got sent skywards toward the Gatondan, where Kiryu Hikifune resided. All Aswachi are made from dead souls, or rather the raw material left behind. When a soul goes through the cycle of reincarnation, they are cleansed of everything that made up the individual. Something like that always leaves fragments behind, which I gather and merge together to form my Aswachi. Completely blank until they come into contact with their soul reaper and why they take on their own individual form. "So you're going to take the remains of Muramasas to activate a new Aswachi?" she asked, trying to understand the finer complexities of spirit blade forging. "How does he become a contract spirit through that?" "I said I was going to Aura forge Muramasa, not make a new one," Otsu explained as he landed and caught Oraheim before she turned into past on the ground. Or tried to catch her, since as she came closer to the ground, the air itself tried to keep her aloft with her green ring glowing. I'm going to take the already forged blades of Muramasa and use them to remake the blade. It won't be Muramasa, but it will have his reincarnation. He started to head for the palace of Hikifune, who was already cooking a large buffet. Just as well, since Zangetsu took everything I had. Kurosaki's sword must really be powerful then. Oraheim said in amazement, almost distracted by the scent of Hikifune's cooking. I never saw an Aswachi come out of that pit already claimed. He said, rolling his shoulders to relieve some of the stress. I've also never seen a Zanpakuto absorb all of my Aswachi either. He said, pondering how this all came to be. All that power, compressed into those dual Zanpakuto. Is this because of his being a hollow in Quincy? Maybe after I reforge Muramasa, I should bring out Sayofushi. See which blade is better. Karakura fights, Chad vs Yami. Bala! The large Arankar shouted, shooting his energy from his fists, as Chad charged at him with both arms as shields and blocking the blasts. You stubborn bastard! He began charging a Siro before Chad shot in front of him and switched his left arm to its devil form. La muerte! Chad called out, uppercutting his opponent in the chin. The blow slammed his mouth shut, cracked several of the Espada's teeth, made the Siro explode prematurely, and finished with the shockwave of the attack pulsing through Yami's skull. Not letting up, he took the chance to charge a shield arm and hit the Arankar in the stomach. El Directo! The blow made Yami double over and the following blast sent him flying, followed by the massive blast pounding against the Arankar. Chad took a chance to catch his breath, having spent the whole fight trying to outrun and beat down the Arankar, and tiredness was beginning to set in. That moment of respite ended when Yami appeared in front of the Foolbringer and slammed a fist into Chad and sent him flying until he rolled onto his feet. You're tougher than you look, I'll give you that. Yami said through his broken teeth, spitting out a glob of blood and teeth. But you'll break, human. Not if I break you first. Chad grunted as the two charged at each other again. Royal Palace, Huden. Are you sure this will work? Oraheim asked, calligraphy brush with ink in hand over a wide sheet of paper. You did say this is a first for you. Don't worry, Heim. Otsu answered, breaking up the blades of the two Muramasa swords into smaller pieces and setting them in two separate piles. The monk supplied the ink and paper, you just have to write what abilities you want it to have. Only two though, and we'll have to rename the finished blade. Oraheim shrugged and thought about what to write. What she puts down would be the final say in the sword's future, but not too strong as it would also draw on her power, and she was beginning to tax herself now with the spirit she did have. Eventually, she had her idea. Cut my enemies, heal my friends. She said while writing the two commands on the paper, one phrase on one half. When she finished, the ink dried and disappeared, becoming part of the paper and charging it with power. Otsu finished breaking the blades into pieces and stacked them into a pile. Okay, bring me the papers. Otsu ordered as Oraheim grabbed the two and went over to him. The master smith stacked the blade fragments together and wrapped the two in the different papers. He then poured watery clay over the two and covered them in straw he got from Hikifune before having his girl, Hasuka, move the stacks to Mara's fire. The forge having been restored while he and Oraheim ate. The fragments will absorb the power you imbued in the papers, then I will consolidate the fragments into a whole before combining them and form the rest of the blade. What do you think the name should be? Well, Oraheim starting while letting her mind guide her down what she thought would be perfect, he did seem to be a blade to only cause harm. Seemed very reminiscent to famous blacksmith whose swords only craved blood, so I tried to make this one be the opposite. I think Masamune would be best. The legendary human smith whose works were holy, healing blades in the legends? Otsu asked, hearing some details of mortal smiths. Nice choice. The billets were pulled out and he began to hammer away at the two, forming the flesh and heart of the sword, the Kawagani and Shinigane. Oraheim sat by and watched, listening to the clangs of the hammer on the steel. Karakura fights, Uriya vs Samari. You've seen that it doesn't work, Uriya said while dodging 5 simultaneous slashes and shooting the black Arankar in the stomach with a relatively weak arrow, so do you keep doing it?
The eighth Espada looked at his opponent while grasping at his injury. "Forgive the hesitation, I'm just trying to figure something out,"
Zamari said, leaping to the side as Yuria shot another few arrows at him. "I heard that the Quincy were destroyed by the Soul Reapers, yet here one is as an ally of the Soul Reapers. What possessed you to join such an arrogant group?"
"Arrogant? How so?"
Yurio asked as he dodged another attempt from Zamari with his speed clones. "Shinigami strike down hollows as if that were the natural way of things," the Arrancar said, "and made the same judgment with the Quincy when they cut them down. Because of that, and their unchallenged rule, they fancy themselves as gods or purveyors of some great justice."
"What gave them the right to judge hollows as being evil?" To his surprise, Yuryu began laughing. Calmly at first before becoming more and more loud. "Of all the beings I met, you are truly the most arrogant fool I've come across," the Quincy said, earning a scowl from the Arrancar. "Viewing your opponent as an equal? That was just insulting. But what gave the Soul Reapers the right to act as such? Your master Aizen is trying to take that very being's throne. And what's so unnatural about wanting to protect those that can't protect themselves?" Yurio asked before disappearing and stabbing Zamari in his side with a seal Schneider that solidified its blade into a gen. "As for the hollows, what can you add? What have you done aside from eat and kill? You prey on humans, souls, even each other. What do you actually give to the world? Any of them? Even now, you are only the way you are because of a Soul Reaper making you that way. Is it so wrong to kill such a disgusting parasite?"
Yuria said with a glare as his aura changed, showing that he was done playing. "I'd advise you give an answer, otherwise you'll die for nothing. You worthless hollow." Karakura fights, Lisa, Tatsuki, and Senna vs. Luppy. The former Espada, Lisa, and Senna all released their Zanpakuto, resulting in Luppy unleashing his 8 tentacles, Lisa's large spade, and Senna's whirlwind staff. Tatsuki was holding her own just fine, but all she was doing was dodging the tentacles. Lisa was able to cut off segments of the Arrancar's tentacles while Senna served as a distraction. The tactic was going well as the two dodged another 4 tentacles coming at them and into 2 more, each one getting wrapped up. "You've been quite the nuisance," Luppy sneered, readying another pair of tentacles to skewer the girls. "But now, time to enjoy punching you full of holes." "I prefer more endowed women with dash." Luppy was interrupted when Tatsuki threw a rabbit punch, hitting Luppy in the back of his head and making him bite off some of his tongue. As he was screaming in pain, Senna brought up her Mirokomaru and the rings on her staff began to cackle with electricity. "Zap zap," she said with a smile, letting the rings come into contact with Luppy's tentacle. "The grinding wind currents generates electricity, which is gathered into the rings of my Mirokomaru. I still haven't gotten the hang of it yet, but it's a nice skill to have." The shocks wore off and the 2 Shinigami had enough slack to escape from the tentacles. "You tomboy bitch," Luppy growled, glaring at Tatsuki before spinning his tentacles around like a buzzsaw and focusing all 8 on her. They were fast, but Tatsuki was faster, dodging with a mix of Shuanpa and parkour. "You're an Espada?" she asked, flowing around a bunch of tentacles she almost got tied in a knot. "If you really are the quality standard for Aizen's top Arrancar, then the rest of us have nothing to worry about." She flashed in front of Luppy and punched him square in the face, jumping back as he tried to strike her with his tentacles again. "I guess now's as good a time as any to try this out," she said, pulling out her blade and performing a martial arts kata. "Ignite! Hit Ori!" Her sword broke up into 4 flames that connected themselves to her hands and feet. Her hands now bore gauntlets in the shape of sharp beaks that were a fiery reddish-orange with greaves ending in a raptor-like claw. All 4 were so hot that the air shimmered from the heat. "Time to burn, punk," she said with a vicious grin before shooting a large fireball at the disgraced Arrancar. "You bitch," he growled, defending himself with his 8 tentacles, then screaming as the heat started to burn them away. "I'll kill Y-," he started before feeling his resurrection break and a blade digging into his back and another through his chest. "It's rude to ignore your other partners," Lisa said, pulling her spade back along with Senna pulling her staff out. "Course you were a former Espada, so you couldn't have been that strong to begin with."
The girl mocked as Luppy struggled to stay up. You! He growled before he and the others were trapped within orange barriers from the sky. Royal Palace, Ichigo City. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo roared, swinging his blades and unleashing the wave of compressed racier at the manifested Zangetsu. The Zanpakuto spirit knocked the blast to the side and charged at his master as the two continued their clash, Ichigo watching from the sidelines. Tensa Zangetsu. He thought to himself, being the master of names letting him know Zangetsu's Bankai. Letting him unleash 100% of the power within himself would certainly make him a fearsome opponent. But it's that new Jetsu form that I find more concerning. Ichigo's Ryuryoka was the darkest power he's felt in millennium, and while he controlled all things black he had to wonder who was stronger. Truly, he will be our ace against Yawatch. You picked well, my old friend. I wonder if His Majesty is tempted to make him a member of the Zero Squad from his power alone. The second Ichigo set foot on the disc, he noticed the pressure was slightly uncomfortable before walking on ahead. When the monk asked if he wanted to know the name of his Bankai, Ichigo answered with saying the very name of his Bankai. Instead, the boy manifested his spirit and began sparring with Zangetsu. Time passed and Otsu made his way to the monk's side, carrying a sword and a tank full of jelly. Well, Oraheim has her sword, he said as he sat by the monk, watching Ichigo fight his Zanpakuto. One that cuts her enemies and heals her friends. Seemed appropriate for that girl. Osho nodded as Ichigo brought the blades together in the form of a bow and shot a barrage of arrows at Zangetsu. Otsu's finger curled themselves around the hilt of his failure Saifushi, the sharpest blade he created. You really want to see how that will go? Ichigo asked, knowing that Otsu was itching to see the boy in action. See if it was more than just his sword. At the very least, I'd love to see this girl in action for once. He whispered before flashing toward Ichigo with blade in hand. Otsu was immediately kicked to the side when he came within striking distance of Ichigo, sending him tumbling into the building. If you wanted to use a surprise attack, you should be quieter. The hybrid scolded as Zangetsu faded back to Ichigo's inner world. So, you wanted to test out these blades? He gestured to Zangetsu and the sword in Otsu's hands as the smith got back up, laughing. That's right, Ichi. He cheered as he got into his battle stance. Now, show me what you got. Ichigo brought the two halves of Zangetsu together as the air ignited in pure black energy. Bankai, he said, becoming consumed by the energy and his voice becoming warped. Tensa Zangetsu. Kurosaki household. Masaki's fingers were bleeding, Kan was covered in scratches and bruises, Karen and Yuzu were sweating bullets, but the number of hollows were decreasing. After a few more minutes and one last shot, Masaki slew the final hollow and the swarm ended. Kan went to the twins and Masaki breathed a sigh of relief. The barrier held, her family was safe, and she could finally relax. Until the barrier shattered like glass. Before anyone could react, Masaki felt a sharp strike to the back of her neck before losing consciousness and falling to the ground. Kan was smacked in the head with an odd weapon in the shape of two crescents. So these are the targets? The twins looked up to a tall lanky figure with a wide hood and oily black hair, an eye patch, and a permanent display of teeth. His frown deepened as he sighed in disappointment. Well, I guess it'd fun to train them. In an instant, another being showed up between the twins and the errand car. We have what we came for, Noritora, call the retreat. The shorter horned individual said, grasping at the twins protectively. You sure, Ulquiorra? Noritora asked, grinning at the unconscious Masaki. Lord Aizen said that Ichigo cares a lot for his family. Imagine how broken he'd be if a heavy pressure fell on the errand car before he could finish his statement. We have his sisters. The fourth Espada said. That's more than enough. We are leaving. He let up the pressure and just as Noritora was about to signal the rest, he was kicked in the neck and sent flying. So long as I breath in this, or any other body, you will not take Yuzu or Karen. Kan growled, charging at Ulquiorra, who caught his fist with ease and blocked every other attack. Tell Ichigo, that upon my honor as the fourth, his sisters will not be harmed. He said before punching Kan back.
He then opened a garganta and took the twins into his arms, seeing as they were both too tired to move, and made his way into Hueco Mundo. Khan was about to charge after him when he was smashed into the ground.
You are one stubborn annoyance. Noritora growled, getting ready to decapitate the mod soul before pausing.
Great, one of those losers is about to get killed. He groaned as Aizen made it clear that he didn't want to lose any Arrancar if it could be avoided, and he'd know if Noritora screwed that up.
Fine.
He stomped on Ichigo's body, gaining a sickening crack and scream, before releasing a feral hollow roar and making the Jillians bring down their negation to evacuate his allies.
Well, maybe I'll get what I wanted anyway, he said as a new group of hollows were coming in.
He created a garganta and walked through, leaving the Quincy and Mod Soul to die. Just as the first one was about to chomp down on the Kurosaki matriarch, Khan got up and crushed the creature's head.
You want her?
He said, coughing up blood and releasing a flickering light from his body.
You can't have her. He stood, facing the coming swarm.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Obligatory reference. I can tell you with no ego, this is my finest Zanpakuto,
Otsu said while sitting across from Ichigo in fine white robes with Zangetsu in its sealed state as a katana, with a dark blade and a black sheath with the many phases of the moon, starting and ending with the new moon. If in your travels, you should encounter the Spirit King, even he will be cut down. He presented the sword to Ichigo, who took it gingerly and with some measure of respect.
Orange-haired warrior, go. Otsu finished.
You are such a geek.
Ichigo replied, shaking his head. TFS reference.
Yami and Chad were struggling in a battle of strength with each other, yelling as one tried to overpower the other. The ground bending and shifting under the might of the giants.
Around them though. This is so dumb.
Tatsuki groaned, most everyone pausing to watch the two biggest combatants fight.
This could not get any dumber. How about that?
Luppy asked, pointing in the opposite direction to Ishin and Grimjaw just punching each other into submission.
Yep, the impossible happened, Lisa said, watching the two not even bother dodging any punches. This got so much dumber. Should we return to killing each other? Zamari asked, not taking his eyes off the fight. Later, I actually want to see how this goes,
Yuria said, with everyone in silent agreement.
Kind of wish we had popcorn,
Senna said, everyone again in silent agreement.
Chapter 67, Insubordination. Las Noches. Ulquiorra guided the twins down the dark halls of the Arrancar Palace to Aizen's throne room, hovering over them protectively while sending the occasional glare to Noritora.
Karen kept a brave look on her face while Yuzu was shaking and clearly frightened, but they kept on walking. They finally came into a long expansive hallway lined with pillars, occupied with who they knew to be the enemy. Many different Arrancar were along the walls, with two Shinigami standing in front of a tall stone block that housed a throne at its peak, with the man they suspected to be Sosuke Aizen sitting on it like a king.
Welcome, Yuzu and Karen Kurosaki, to our castle of Las Noches,
Aizen said, keeping that dark, calm smile on his face. You may or may not know who I dash. You're going to die when our brother gets here. He was interrupted, raising his eyebrow to who he understood was the more gentle of the twins. Karen looked to her sister in surprise as Yuzu glared defiantly at the man that currently holds their lives in his hands. She soon smirked and joined her sister's level of confidence.
Yep, when Ichi shows up, this place will be nothing but rubble.
Many of the Arrancar shifted, either from fear or excitement, but Aizen's expression did not change. I'm well aware of how powerful he is,
Aizen admitted. But him coming here is exactly what I want.
There was a noticeable growl in the darkness behind Aizen as the man in question kept smiling. But you are still my guests here, despite just being bait, so I'll leave you in the care of someone I can trust.
Nilil,
he called, making a green-haired Arrancar step forward.
Yes, Lord Aizen?
The now-named Nilil had a skull with curved horns, a scar going down her forehead to her nose with a red mark across her face just under her eyes, in a form-fitting white uniform that covered her whole body.
Your mission is now to watch over these two,
Aizen said, earning a surprise from most everyone in the room.
They are of no use to me dead, and Ulquiorra has an appointment with an old friend of his.
He turned his gaze to his most loyal subordinate, who seemed to hesitate ever so slightly.
I understand, Lord Aizen, he said, looking up to his master as Nilil took the twins. I will kill Ichigo Kurosaki. Karakura Hospital.
Ryukin was finalizing some last-minute papers, the chaos from the hollow attack finally dying down to let him focus, when he noted that something felt off to him. His papers were in order, his patients were in stable condition, none of the Shinigami were showing up at his hospital, which meant that Oraheim was back from Soul Society, so what was it that was making him feel uneasy? His answer came from a tapping on the window, revealing Hiyori, who had 2 unconscious Kurosakis with her. He acted quickly to open his office windows and called Kane to get him a couple of gurneys.
What happened?
The doctor asked as the wizard placed the 2 on the couches in his office, himself moving to run a quick examination of Masaki before moving on to Ichigo's body. Aizen used the recent swarm of hollows as a distraction. Hiyori started, standing back to let the expert do his work. He sent Arankar to occupy Ishin and the other seated officers while sending another 2 to attack the house. They knocked out Masaki, beat the crap out of Ichigo's body, and took the girls. She reported, trying to prepare herself for when she'll have to give this same message to Ishin.
What happened to Kan? Ryukin asked, moving to Ichigo's body.
Ichigo seems to be fine, but Kan would nev dash.
Kan's dead. Hiyori interrupted, holding up another file.
Kisuke has been thorough, but Kan was a modified Jiken and there was only so much he could take.
Ryukin took the file as Kane entered with the gurneys as Hiyori helped to move the prone bodies.
Inside a human body, enhanced speed, strength, agility, nothing too out of the ordinary.
Ryukin thought as he read Kisuke's account for the modifications he made to the mod soul. Regeneration in case of heavy damage to the body. Warning, proportionate to damage.
So if Ichigo's body was fatally injured, it would take Kan's own life to fix.
Hiyori, where's Kan's pill?
He asked, dreading the answer he would be getting. I figured Ichigo's body was stable, so I extracted Kan's pill form, but all I got was dust.
She said, sorrow evident.
He just finished repairing Ichigo's lungs from the rib fragments.
Damn it.
The Quincy sighed before setting aside his emotions to do his job. Right, Kane, take Ichigo's body to the stasis room. Without a Jiken, he's essentially comatose. I'll be taking Masaki to get a few scans, make sure nothing's damaged. I should go, Ishin would want the casualty reports.
Hiyori said before flying out the window, leaving the Quincy to do their job as Ryukin pulled Masaki down to radiology. Good luck, Hiyori. That's not going to end well. Royal Palace, in Trance Way.
Ichigo made his way toward the edge of the entrance into the realm of the Spirit King, the royal guard there to see him off, with Otsu and one other of the Zero Squad missing. Kiryu Hikifune, a really plump woman with purple hair and a large rice spoon, and Senjimara Shadera, a pale, slender woman with long black hair and multiple long and bony arms with a radiant gold crescent moon ornament in her hair.
Both in standard Shinigami garb along with Osho.
So, I don't see that big pillar you used to come down to Soul Society, Ichigo noted after looking around for a bit.
Is there another way for me to get down? Senjimaro stepped forward. 2, actually.
She answered as she got closer to the hybrid. We have our own Senkamen, but it can only be opened once a day and it was already used to send Oraheim back to the world of the living.
The other way is for you to take the stairs,
she said as she tapped a Ken against the floor and created a long spiral staircase that kept going and going. This route should take about a week if you go at your normal pace. Kiryu said as she pulled out a small package.
I made you rice balls for the trip.
Course there is the 72 natural barriers that separates the palace and Soul Society, which is why the Oken is needed.
Senjimaro continued.
The Oken is actually a power infused into our beings when we become member of the Royal Guard. I would have an outfit made of the Oken's power ready, but Osho and Otsu never told us what they were doing and never let you come to us.
I'll need your measurements, so Street Ash. Are your Haori made of Oken fibers?
Ichigo interrupted, pointing at the master seamstress's Haori.
Yes it is, why dash?
She started asking, feeling a little annoyed before Ichigo disappeared and walked by her, heading for the edge, with one of the Zero Squad's Haori in hand.
I'll find a way to send this back,
he said as a ball of cackling blue energy formed and was growing in the center and 10 feet away from the stairway. With no hesitation, Ichigo dived off the edge, held the oaken cloth in front of him, created a racier platform at his feet, and called out.
Hado number 88, Hariagekizoku Shinten Reiho.
The energy blasted at Ichigo's feet and shot him down, disappearing from eyesight almost instantly.
That brat! Ichigo sighed, almost laughing at the kid's brazen attitude. How does he expect to give me back my Haori? I'm sure he'll find a way.
Otsu said, finally showing up with a guy with a hooked pompadour haircut.
After all, I never thought anything would be able to damage Sayafushi,
he said, thinking back to his fight with Ichigo.
His Bankai breaking then reforming almost instantly before shattering Sayafushi and cutting him in half. Kid's terrifying enough as he is already. Hard to believe he can still get stronger. Indeed. Osho admitted, thinking about the battles to come.
Maybe the next stage of his training shouldn't be in power, but in maturity.
Squad 1 Meeting Hall. -52 confirmed dead, 93 critically injured, and the remaining Soul Reapers either crippled or too exhausted to keep going.
Ishin reported from his monitor while Hiyori, Uryu, and Oraheim were doing their best to change the numbers. Thankfully, with Oraheim back, the injured and a few of the dead will recover while the rest deal with their exhaustion. All the captains in attendance shifted slightly, knowing that Aizen would attack and cursing themselves for not sending any more backup, though Unohana did immediately send out a relief unit to help in the relief efforts. That's the situation with the squad, but it was just a distraction from Aizen's real target.
He took my daughters as bait to lure Ichigo into Hueco Mundo.
Many of the captains shifted, knowing what was going to happen if and when Ichigo found out that Aizen has his sisters.
We cannot let Ichigo learn of this, the Jin Ryusai finally said.
If he does, then he'd walk into whatever trap Aizen has ready for him.
I have tremendous faith in the boy, but Aizen is never one to be underestimated.
If he does have something to use to give him an advantage against Ichigo, I'd rather have backup ready and available to aid him. The commander ordered, just as everyone felt a disturbance in the air that preceded a thunderous boom that shook everything. After that, Ichigo appeared in the Squad 1 meeting hall, holding a Zero Squad Haori.
That was neat,
Ichigo said, folding the oaken cloth and heading for his teacher's side. After a couple of steps, he noticed that something was off. There was a tension in the air as the captains were looking at the hybrid.
Did I miss something? Before anything could be said, Hiyori appeared by Ishin's side.
Captain Ishin, most of the squad is now recovered but still need their rest, and Ryukin reports that Ichigo and Masaki are fine. She reported before noticing Ichigo's presence. Ichigo, Khan's last words were to tell you, upon my honor as the fourth, your sisters will not be harmed. Ichigo's eyes widened as the meaning of the statement resonated with him.
In that same moment, Hiyori realized that that was probably a mistake. I'm going, she said before running off. Ichigo opened a Garganta to the human world but was immediately tied down. Bakudo number 99, Kin.
Yamamoto, Unohana, Kisuke, Yukitake, Tessai, and Hachi yelled out, tying the hybrid down with the strongest binding spell as multiple black wraps and iron shafts pinned Ichigo in place.
Let me go,
he roared, straining against the spell as the Garganta was sealed by Tessai and Hachi.
Zaraki stepped forward to lift up the hybrid and hold him before Yamamoto. Release me. I have to go. Out of the question, Ichigo. The dragon returned, stern in his tone.
You are key to our battle against Aizen, and we cannot afford to lose you now when the battle is so soon.
He has nothing that can stop me,
he growled as the sounds of tearing hinted to his binds breaking.
Don't be rash, Ichigo. Think.
Yamamoto yelled as Soifan came in and slapped a pair of Sekiseki cuffs on him and canceling his spiritual power.
This is an obvious trap by Aizen to lure you away from the battlefield.
He may have developed a new spell or technique to stop you, have an Arankar specifically made to be able to kill you. Any of these possibilities makes it too risky to let you blindly rush in.
A few more seconds of struggling passed before Ichigo finally relaxed. I'm sorry, Ichigo, but you cannot go.
We can send Yuryu, but we need you for Aizen.
Genryusai looked to Isshin, who nodded and went to deliver the orders to his lieutenant.
Zaraki, take Ichigo to the Mukin prison and I want 2 captains watching him at all times. Ichigo remained silent, looking into the distance and into the eyes of Zangetsu, who manifested just seconds before Soifan cuffed Ichigo.
The blade nodded and disappeared, planning their escape.
With Yuryu, I want you all ready to move out the second Ichigo shows up. Isshin said as soon as the connection ended, knowing that his son's friends were watching. Knowing they were exposed, they revealed themselves from behind the corner to the room. Except for Lisa and Senna, I do need some help within the squad. I thought the head captain wasn't going to allow Ichigo to go because of this being an obvious trap. Tatsuki said, earning a nod from most of the other teens. And he probably knows Ichigo is going to ignore that in favor of saving his sisters.
Isshin answered.
But really, any of you would be enough for Ichigo to defy orders and dive head-on into enemy territory, going into obvious traps, just to ensure with his own eyes that you're safe. He turned to face them as their commanding officer. You are going straight into Hueco Mundo, the land of the Hollows, and the base of your enemy. Assume you are getting no backup and no aid beyond what you are bringing with you.
Dismissed. He finished as the assembled teens looked at each other and nodded.
And Yuryu, the Quincy turned back to the Shinigami, if you could scrounge up some allies, that would be most helpful. Those 3 do seem willing to side with us, but how can we convince them of this kind of open rebellion?
Yuryu asked, knowing Isshin meant the Sternritters.
They've yet to try to publicly help us. I'd say, let them know that this operation is strictly off record, and to convince Yawatch to allow this, then let them know it could go a long way to convincing you and Ichigo to join his side. He has been trying to get the Ishidas and Kurosakis to come to the light for generations, so that might help.
Yuryu mused as the rest of the teens left to begin their preparations.
The Quincy flashed away, aiming for the apartment where the Sternritter hid away. Upon reaching the door and knocking, he was greeted by the lime-haired beauty queen, Candace.
What is it? She asked/demanded from the bespectacled teen. Ichigo and I need your help,
he said, Candace raising an eyebrow before letting him in.
The living room was pretty Spartan in decoration, with mostly Quincy symbolism being the only decor.
Basby and Bambietta were sitting on a couch and chair as Candace took her seat, the heat gesturing for Yuryu to start pleading his case.
Earlier today my cousins, twin sisters Yuzu and Karen, were kidnapped by Arankar and taken to Hueco Mundo as a ploy by Aizen to get Ichigo into a trap. Basby started idly flicking his wrist, subtly pointing Yuryu to a mirror.
The teen looked and saw the white of a Sternritter uniform of the Vandenrake, telling him what he needed to know.
You two must be really desperate to come to us then, Basby said, leaning forward to examine the Quincy separatist. Considering how much you don't want to get involved with the Vandenrake.
This is family, Yuryu returned now that he knew they were being watched. I thought that was something important to the Quincy. If His Majesty is willing to spare you 3, your help would be appreciated and we'd be willing to hear out Yawatch, he said, turning around to leave.
Urahara Shoten, we don't know when we'll be leaving, he said before exiting. Las Noches, with Ulquiorra.
The aspect of emptiness made his way through the halls of Las Noches. He swore to protect Ichigo's sisters, but why? What prompted him to say that to the soul inside Ichigo's body? He could have left out the part of protecting them and that would have been enough to convince the hybrid to come here. But he swore to protect them, why? If he killed Ichigo, what would happen to the girls?
Their parents would likely be enemies in the coming war, which might lead to their deaths.
Would Lord Aizen show them mercy, or would he try to recreate Ichigo with them?
How would he protect them when this is all done? Would he even be able to fight Ichigo?
He knew the hybrid was powerful, but it has been so long since they got a measure of his strength.
Could he fight Ichigo?
He shook his head to dispel such thoughts. He swore to kill him, swore it to his master, the man who gave him everything. His own voice, his sense of hearing, smell, and taste. Ichigo and he were on opposite sides, they were destined to fight. Besides, it would be moot if he would be able to protect the twins if Ichigo was capable of defeating him.
Silburn, Yawacha's throne room. That's the situation, Your Majesty.
Jugram informed the Quincy King, telling him what Uriya told the spying Sternritters.
What are your commands?
The Almighty thought about it, looking down at his hand. There was a strange sensation that he lost his connection to several of his children and had a pretty good guess on whom he was severed from and whose idea it was, but not the how. They may aid their wayward brothers in the attack to save their sisters.
Yawach said, the Sternritter Grandmaster bowing in acknowledgement. But should the chance come, I want Yuzu and Karen to be brought before me. Then, I shall remind them of their one true father.
As you wish. Hashwolf said as he left the chamber, finding Basby standing next to the throne room.
You have your orders. See to it that you do not fail, lest you face His Majesty's punishment. I'm sure he'll be understanding if I can't find an opportunity.
The Heat said as he pushed off the wall, making his way to the portal back to the living world. I doubt Ichigo and Yuryu are willing to leave the girls unguarded.
Gotta find a way to let them know that.
Basby planned as he made his way to the others to let them know to gear up.
With Ichigo.
Again, real sorry about this, Ichigo. Kayarako said, to Shiro standing across for him.
But Old Man Yama does have a point.
Ichigo laid silently on the ground, held fast with layers of one of the strongest binding Kido, and powers cancelled because of the Sekiseki handcuffs. The hybrid refused to say anything to anyone, just laying there in the endless expanse of the Mukin prison. Time passed as the elevator opened, signaling the changing of the guard shifts.
The doors opened to reveal Soifan and Kamamura, both unconscious.
What the dash? Hitsugaya whispered as he walked toward the elevator and Kayaraka shifted his stance slightly. Suddenly the two were pulled into the elevator by their necks, with a white-clad figure jumping out of the confined space. The second the two captains landed inside the elevator, the doors shut and the chamber began to ascend out of the prison.
Took you long enough?
Ichigo said as Zangetsu rose to his full height, holding a Haori in his hand.
I assume you wanted this before we left. The hybrid blade said as he cut the Kido spell holding his master down.
Ichigo leaped to his feet and held his bound hands forward, letting Zangetsu cut off the trapped appendages. With a grunt of pain, Ichigo regenerated his hands and quickly activated a Garganta. Already sensing that the rest of the captains were mobilizing, Ichigo took the Royal Guard Haori as Zangetsu dematerialized into his master and jumped through the tear in space. He formed his Raisure path as he slid through the infinite expanse of the precipice world, his brotherly instincts demanding that he head one way while the more reasonable part of him guided him to the living world to gather his allies.
Squad 15 Barracks.
It was deep into the night and the rescue team assembled outside of the Urahara Shoten. The three Sternritter were dressed in their military garb, still slightly on edge about being near enemy territory. Uriya had his squad uniform on, which was basically a Quincy outfit with black on it, and using his lieutenant's badge as a clasp for his cape. Orihime was wearing a similar outfit to when they attacked Soul Society, but with a belt that held several pouches for exorcism tags and a long katana at her hip. Chad was wearing a dark long-sleeved shirt with a rose emblazoned on the left sleeve, with his medallion proudly on display. Tatsuki was wearing her own version of Yoruchi's black suit, with a deep cleavage and red cloth wrapped on her arms and shins and as a belt. They stood in that spot, waiting until a tear in space opened up to reveal Ichigo, carrying a Haori.
Alright, listen up,
Ichigo said, taking command of the group.
We are heading directly into enemy territory. Assume everything in there is trying to kill you.
I don't care whether you kill them or not, but know this.
Our main objective is to recover Yuzu and Karen. Breaking Aizen's army is just the bonus. Everybody ready?
He asked just as a Senkaman appeared, revealing Rukia.
I am now.
She responded, everyone else gaining a confident smirk and nodding. Ichigo turned, flicking his wrist, opening a new Garganta and slipping on Ichibe's Haori.
Let's tear shit up,
the hybrid said as the group dove through the portal and began to make their way into Hueco Mundo. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Babysitting.
Aizen had Neliel take the twins because out of all of his Arrancar, she would be the closest to keeping them happy and pacified.
Aizen needed the bait in good condition to keep Ichigo in Las Noches.
They're there, Yuzu.
They're staying away. It's okay.
Neliel was saying to a crying Yuzu as Karen beat the ever-living crap out of her two fraction for scaring her sister by popping up out of nowhere as soon as they got to Nell's castle.
Maybe Aizen should have had Hal Libel watch the twins. Rukia's departure. Brother, please. I have to help them. Rukia pleaded with Byakuya, standing in front of the Kuchiki Senkaman. They're our family too.
I'm well aware, Rukia, but you would help him more by joining the captains and keeping him in the Mukin until the war.
Byakuya stated, hoping that Rukia's presence would calm down Ichigo.
Those thoughts died when an alarm started blaring, specifically set up for if Ichigo escaped.
Never mind, go.
The noble groaned, rubbing his forehead in pain while Rukia ran through the doorway between dimensions.
What happened with Tsukishima? The Fullbringer laid on the couch in an isolated room inside the Shoten. It was dark, silent, and he was groaning in pain with an open bottle of painkillers on the floor.
Jinjo stepped in, keeping his footsteps silent as he made his way to his old friend.
Hey man, how you doing? He whispered, keeping as silent as possible.
I rewrote the blood memory of the other 6 Quincy that are our allies, the book reader groaned silently. Learned that I shouldn't have even done the first one when my brain started hemorrhaging from the strain, died as my brain popped like a water balloon, and am only alive because Oraheim can hack death, which still leaves me with this skull-splitting hangover.
Jinjo said nothing as he got up and left. A hangover would hurt less, in retrospect. Chapter 68, The Lost Soul Reaper. With Ichigo's team.
The group emerged from the portal into a long dark corridor, no windows to offer an image outside and no light to illuminate the way aside from a faint image of the passageway. The team looked around to try and get a sense of their surrounding and any possible enemies. Despite finding nothing, they remained on guard, some wondering if they were in Hueco Mundo at all. Oraheim made her way to one of the walls and placed her hand upon it, one of her rings shining a deep amber glow that resonated throughout the corridor.
Terra says we're underground,
she said, keeping her eyes shut. There's a large room down that way with stairs that will lead us above ground. She pointed down the hallway as the group began to move.
Also, something big is heading toward us,
she warned as she joined the group, prompting them to run. Ichigo released a small pulse for his pesquisa to get a read on whatever that something was.
There are 2 Arrancar in this building,
Ichigo said as they ran.
Minor threats. Who wants to get a quick warm-up in? I could use one, Tatsuki said with a smirk.
I don't get to fight nearly enough.
Then I'll join you, Tatsuki, Oraheim added. Masamune has been itching to test himself out.
They soon entered a large circular room with clear lighting and a single staircase, the one that Oraheim said was the way out.
Tatsuki and Oraheim strode out to the center of the room while Ichigo and the rest went off to the side.
It didn't take the residents of this area too long to appear as they blocked off the exit and entrance, both looking more like hollows than the usual Arrancar. One was an incredibly tall being with a stooped posture so his long arms brush along the ground, with black dreadlocks and a hollow mask that seemed more fitting at a masquerade ball than a hollow and revealing his deformed jaw. The other was much smaller, with a beak-shaped mask that only revealed the upper left portion of his pale face and seemed to be lacking any limbs.
Minor threats, Ichigo Kurosaki?
The smaller of the two asked, glancing at the hybrid in question.
That's truly insulting, and this is unforgivable.
He turned his attention back to the girls in the center of the room.
Oraheim Inoue and Tatsuki Arisawa, regarded as the weakest combatants of your group. Oraheim glared at the Arrancar while Tatsuki faced the other. Oh yes, Lord Aizen gave us all information on the members of your team. Though those 3 extras are rather unknown, it's no matter. He brought out 4 spindly gray arms with 5 fingers each. Our duty is to keep you here. Let's go, Damaura. He yelled as he began to shoot bolts of energy from his fingertips while the now-named Damaura raised his fist. Right, Icelinger!
He shouted, only for his fist and Icelinger's bullets to be stopped by 2 orange barriers, both gasping in surprise.
It's true, I'm not one for fighting.
Oraheim said while holding her arms out to direct her sprites to form their shields, pointing upwards with a finger to complete her arrangement with Tatsuki jumping off the barriers.
And I didn't get nearly the same level of training.
She landed on the topmost barrier before kicking off and punching Damaura in the eye and setting his head on fire. The giant began to spin with the force of the punch, with Tatsuki hanging off the mask and kicking off to slam another burning fist in Icelanger's gut, shooting him back like a fireball.
But to think you had a chance was insulting to us.
There was grunt as Damaura forced himself back up, head all charred to hell and swinging about wildly.
Shall I finish? Oraheim asked, unsheathing the blade at her side. Tatsuki gave a smirk and gestured for her to go.
Dashing forward, her defensive barriers offering her an incline, she rushed to Damaura's head and swung the katana down and cleaved his head in twain. She dropped back to the floor as the deformed Arrancar's head began to bleed and his body went limp. She turned to see Tatsuki giving her a thumbs up and Icelanger wrapping his arms around her.
Don't move!
He roared, coughing up blood and his clothes in tatters. If I see you move I'll dash, he threatened before Oraheim shot toward him and stabbed both him and Tatsuki.
Holy crap! Bambietta cried out.
What the hell is with her? Candace asked as Oraheim ripped the blade free and cut Icelanger in half, with not a mark on Tatsuki.
While the Quincy stood in shock, those that knew Oraheim and Tatsuki nodded their heads at their improvements in combat.
Good job out there, girls.
Ichigo told them as the group joined up. Is that Muramesa's new form?
Yep.
The exorcist cheered. Made to solely cut my enemies. Anything else, then it'll just phase through.
Now that they got an explanation, the Vandenrake demanded answers.
But did you know that was going to happen?
Basby asked, still reeling from what he saw. For all the possibilities in the world of spirits, turned out some things could still surprise him.
Not at all. I just knew Oraheim would never harm me,
Tatsuki said, showcasing her trust in her allies. Something of a foreign concept to the Vandenrake. Their celebrations were short-lived as the building began to rumble.
Of course. Self-destruct features,
Ichigo said as everyone groaned.
Run!
He shouted, prompting them all to head for the staircase and into the world above. The shaking tripped Oraheim, which prompted Tatsuki to use Flash Step to help her, just as a bunch of large debris began to fall on top of them. Before the stones got too close to them, a bunch of small balls of Raisher sank into the debris, causing them to explode into smaller, harmless fragments.
Get moving, girls! Bambi yelled as they ascended up the stairs and out of the collapsing death trap. Las Noches meeting room.
The alarm rang out through the hollow palace of Las Noches, calling all the Arrancar inside to attention. The 10 Arrancar that made up Aizen's illustrious Espada gathered to a single place while the rest of the Arrancar were given a message from Aizen by the Exequias, the termination squad of Hueco Mundo. The same message that Aizen was personally delivering to his 10 strongest soldiers.
As predicted, we have intruders,
Aizen said to his assembled elites.
Ichigo Kurosaki took the bait. An image was projected, showing the invaders as they stood outside the entrance of the collapsed tunnel.
They were conversing amongst themselves while looking at the majesty of the massive palace. A low growl of excitement escaped from Grimjaw while another of his Espada scoffed.
These are the intruders, a dark-skinned elderly man said, grumbling in disbelief. They are children.
Most of the Espada were equally unimpressed with the exception of the scientist among them and the ones that already fought against them.
It's disgraceful that you lost to that brat Grimjaw. Enough barragan,
Aizen ordered, returning everyone's attention to him.
While 5 of them are the Ryoka that infiltrated the Siriidii, these 3 extra Quincy are rather unknown,
he said, realizing what they were when they manipulated Raisher to form a platform and were dressed similar to Yuria during the Soul Society break-in.
Keep a level head and let them come to us.
Set up the battlefields to your advantage and fight to kill. The Quincy with the glasses, Yuryu Ishida, and Ichigo Kurosaki were both regarded as targets for the captains of the Gotii. I will use a similar policy, none but the Espada are to fight Yuryu and only Espada from rank 5 and on may battle Ichigo Kurosaki.
With Ichigo's team, The group was speeding across the endless desert sands and to the only building in sight, Aizen's palace.
Instead of running and expending energy pointlessly, Basby came up with the idea of their current mode of transportation, a Racier platform made and maintained by a Quincy, and taking advantage of the mass concentration of Racier in the atmosphere. They've been riding on this mobile platform for 10 minutes, most focusing on the battles ahead while Candace explained the concept of shrifts to Oraheim and Tatsuki and how Bambietta helped them.
Bambietta, you're up.
Yuria called out, keeping time for the other Quincy to know when to switch who controls the Racier platform. The Explode took her place next to the Heat as he relinquished control to her. All the while, Las Noches did not seem to change as they rode. Yuria then went to Ichigo's side, who never once turned his eyes from the giant domed building.
How much further do you think? Too damn far. The hybrid growled.
It's been bugging me for time that we've been moving fairly fast, but that building doesn't seem any closer. Then I noticed the trees. Yuria took a glance to the strange stone plants that decorated the desert sands, skinny and withered up close, but the ones at the base of the building were like small pins. Meaning Las Noches was bigger than they thought and how far they were. And we can't go any quicker because maintaining this transport is taking all the concentration we can muster at a time.
The teen groaned. Just how big is Las Noches supposed to be?
Suddenly, in the distance, the sand began to shift and rise as a figure formed. A massive hollow that was made of sand with a mask that seemed like a normal face with a wide mustache, and a head like a sandcastle.
So you are the intruders. It spoke with a deep echoing tone.
I will not dash. The top half of its body was blown apart suddenly, with Ichigo's smoking fist as the only indicator of what happened. Before anything else could happen, giant hands began to sprout from all around them.
It's pointless,
the hollow said as he reformed.
I am Runaganga, guardian of the white sand. All the desert sand is my body and the defense of Las Noches is my purpose. Bambietta made them serve and twist to avoid all the slamming palms of Runaganga.
If any of you got any bright ideas to fight him, use them. She yelled as she narrowly dodged another palm with the ground giving way to a massive antlion pit. And now we're screwed if we lose the platform. Fantastic. She groaned as she lifted them skyward and above the reaches of the sand.
Rukia, think you can freeze him?
Ichigo asked as Runaganga created multiple tornadoes of sand.
I can try,
she said as got to the edge and drew her circles.
Some nomai, Tsukishiro, she said and created a massive pillar of ice, leaving Las Noches untouched. That should do it,
she sighed as the desert calmed. After a small debate, it was decided that they'd bust through the wall instead of through the ceiling, especially since Bambietta gained a throbbing headache and a test shot revealed the dome was shielded.
Candace took over the transport and brought them to the ground and to the wall of the palace. Finally, Las Noches.
The hybrid smirked as the rest of the group readied for combat, until Ichigo heard something off.
Rukia, did you freeze the sand under the circle as well? He asked before they dropped into the sudden sinkhole. Forest of Minos. Can you feel that? A woman asked her twin, two sisters looking off into the distance, sensing a disturbance in the air.
Either something big fell in or a lot of somethings.
I'd say a lot of somethings,
the other sister said, sensing the individuals that made up the group.
And it seems like they're being thrown. Must have pissed of Runaganga something fierce. Some of those seem a bit familiar, don't you think? The first asked as a man with a gazelle skull mask began to move. What is it, Ashido? We're going to check it out,
Ashido said to the two.
Let go, yin and yang, he ordered as departed. Right. The sister Arankar returned, following their savior. With Ichigo's group.
Okay, we got dragged into the sand, thrown away from Las Noches if our fall is of any indication, thousands of feet away from the surface, and stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Yurio groaned as everyone pulled themselves to their feet. Can anyone give any good news?
We're still together if that counts for anything,
Basby said as Candace was having a near psychotic break.
The teen sighed and resigned himself to count their blessings as Ichigo had a mental conversation with his Zanpakuto.
Okay, according to Zangetsu, we're in the forest of Minos.
The hybrid said as he gained most everyone's attention. Orihime was helping Candace fix her look. Apparently when one of us consumes a hollow, we get a portion of their memories.
Instead of questioning the plausibility of that, I'm just happy to get some answers. Do any of them include a way out of here? Bambi asked. She and the rest brushed the sand off their bodies.
Most Ajuchas claw their way through the sand and onto the surface, but that was before Aizen set up shop here.
Ichigo responded, sensing 3 new presences coming toward them.
We might need to find an intelligent hollow and ask a few questions, or get ready for our new guests. That got the others' attention as they looked in the same direction as Ichigo, sensing the 3 stronger erasure signatures as well as the swell of hollows coming. With a silent nod from the hybrid teen, the rest of Ichigo's friends took to a vantage point and hid themselves while Yuryu almost had to drag the Sternritters into place for not taking the silent cue. Ichigo himself focused his energy and released a pulse of his hollow Ryatsu that said one thing: I'm strong and hungry. The swell of hollows disappeared almost instantly while the other 3 approached more cautiously, until they came into sight. 3 figures dressed in fur cloaks with the one at point having various hollow masks decorating his, approached Ichigo from behind.
That's close enough,
Ichigo said, freezing the trio.
Any closer and I might consider you hostiles. Are you a captain? The man in the mask asked. I don't recognize that symbol on your Haori,
he said as Ichigo turned to face them, a short moment of surprise crossing his face as he recognized the twin Arrancar that aided Kusaka. That's a long story, but the short answer is no,
Ichigo responded, noticing Bambietta and Candace getting ready to strike but were restrained by Yuryu. My current rank is the 4th seat of the 1st Division,
he said before the masked man appeared in front of him and swung his blade. Ichigo leaned back to dodge the swing and noted how old and weathered the blade had become. He was surprised when he felt the slight pressure of the blade in the air from the man's attack and his instincts kicked in. As the masked Shinigami was preparing his next strike, Ichigo slammed his palm into the man's gut and sent him flying into one of the quartz trees.
Yin and Yang tried to move before Bazbi and Yuria held them down.
The masked man got behind Ichigo and attempted another strike, which the hybrid barely dodged before tripping his opponent. As the Shinigami fell, Ichigo grabbed his mask and slammed his head into the ground, breaking the mask and revealing the face beneath. A regular man with spiky reddish-brown hair.
Yield, Ichigo ordered as the man gave in. Master Ashido, the twins yelled, using their elemental abilities to force Yuria and Bazbi back.
They charged at Ichigo, only for him to strike at their necks with his hand and send them crashing next to the now-named Ashido.
Yin, Yang,
Ashido called out in concern as he went to their sides. When he confirmed that they'd recover, he turned his attention to Ichigo.
You're strong for a non-seated officer,
the hybrid said as the rest of the group appeared, surrounding the Soul Reaper and Arrancar. What's your story? Seeing not other way, Ashido told his tale. A few centuries back, myself and a team of Soul Reapers were sent to repel some hollows that appeared in the Soul Society. When they began to retreat, we followed them.
Straight into this nest of hollows.
My allies fought to their dying breaths until I became the last one of my team, staying here to fight and kill as many hollows as I could in the hopes that it would lessen the damage to the world of the living. The Soul Reaper looked Ichigo in the eyes. I'd ask if I was at all successful in that goal, but these 2 told me about Aizen and his army. And yet you kept them with you,
Ichigo noted as the twins awoke.
They are hollows, yet you've kept them with you.
Why? Maybe I was tired of being alone?
Ashido guessed, unsure of the answer himself. I know they're still hollows, but they chose to be my companions after I saved them at their weakest. The girls pushed themselves to their feet and stood at their savior's side. Hollows on their own are dangerous creatures driven by the instinct to feed, something I felt all too close to becoming myself on many occasions, but as Arrancar.
He let the statement hang as he faced the hybrid. It may be treasonous, but I see a potential here to do some good. I'll dash.
Save it, Ashido, the captain commander has already considered it. He interrupted, surprising Ashido, the twins, and the Sternritters. There's another threat coming, and the idea of Arrancar allies were brought up to help in the coming battle. You might not be doing much good here in Hueco Mundo, but maybe you can back in the Soul Society. The trio of survivors thought for a moment. Even if we wanted to, they've been unable to maintain a portal out of here for us to escape. Ashido said, prompting Ichigo to flick his wrist and open a garganta, shocking the Soul Reaper.
There's a small list of things I am unable to do, Ichigo explained.
Go towards the strongest sense of erasure and you should return to Soul Society. Just maintain the spirit road so you don't fall. Ashido numbly walked toward the portal, reaching out with a shaky hand, almost disbelieving in the chance to finally return home. But his thoughts drifted back to the allies he had, the people that he lost. I appreciate the offer, but dash and slip of paper was pushed on him as he tumbled through the portal, his honed reflexes creating the spirit road just in time.
That's not an offer. It's an order, Ichigo declared, steel in his voice.
Ashido, you are still a member of the Gotii.
I'm the disciple of Genryusai Yamamoto and the 4th seat of Squad 1. I'm pretty sure I outrank, so now I'm ordering you to do this. Return to Soul Society, offer the evidence that Plan 16 is indeed a possibility, retire and become a teacher. That letter to the old man should help,
he said, leaving Ashido no room to argue as Chad threw the twin Arrancar and after him. I'd drag you to the old man myself, but he's probably still pissed with me. This wasn't exactly a sanctioned mission. The Shinigami couldn't help but release a breath of good mirth as he saw an old image of himself in the hybrid.
Understood, sir,
he said, looking over the note of verification Ichigo gave him.
If I could ask something, please go to my friends' graves.
He pointed off in one direction, to where he set up the memorial to his allies. They haven't heard another Soul Reaper's voice in a long time. Ichigo smiled and gave him a thumbs up before the portal closed.
Time skip.
They found the grave with little issue. It seemed like the only place in the entire forest that didn't feel like hollows. The moment was interrupted by a group of Ajuchas, one of which that called himself the Guardian of the Forest, who were almost immediately crushed by the stern ridders as Ichigo and his friends offered prayers to the fallen Shinigami. Under Ichigo's orders, the stern ritter disarmed the Guardian and began interrogating him for the exit out of the Minos forest. Despite the heat and the thunder applying their painful touch, the Guardian remained silent until Ichigo threatened to devour him, slowly. He quickly sang the location of the exit and Basby saw fit to remove his head. Moving at their fastest, they went through the exit and back to getting to Las Noches. Instead of risking another fight with Runaganga, Rukia created more towers of ice which Basby melted and Rukia froze again. The result turned the shifting sands into a solid foundation and their path into Las Noches was unbarred. The Palace of Hollows was now invaded by Ichigo and his allies, something all the occupants of Las Noches felt. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Change of clothes. Absolutely not, Karen yelled, bashing a tiki-masked Arrancar with a large spiked metal club. There is no way I'm wearing any Arrancar clothes, she said before hitting another Arrancar with blonde hair and an insect-like mask. I'm not wearing the clothes of the enemy. Karen Kurosaki.
The tomboy flinched before turning to see her sister, already in a modest set of Arrancar robes, shooting an angry pout at her sister.
You have been wearing those clothes since yesterday. They're dirty and you reek of sweat. Go take a bath and get changed, she said, pointing out the door. Karen glared back as the Arrancar cowered behind Yuzu before relenting. Fine. But I want our clothes clean before Ichi and II rescues us, she said, dropping the club. Where is Nilil anyway? Still playing with the bubbles in the bath.
The twins sighed at the absurdity of their hostage situation.
Noritora makes a mistake.
The current 7th Espada was walking aimlessly through the halls, grumbling in anger over what had currently happened in his life. Dropped 2 ranks with one being claimed by the person that he hated the most, the chance to cause Aizen's chosen enemy some real damage was stymied by Ulquiorra, and now he wasn't even allowed to challenge this Ichigo Kurosaki and prove his strength by killing the hybrid bastard. Things have really been pissing him off lately. He then noticed the humidity in the air and the sounds of splashing and laughter.
Oh yeah, Nilil did say something about the girls and bathing, he said before grinning. Maybe I'll go take a look.
I hate that green-haired bitch, but she has a damn fine body.
Maybe those kids have some potential too. He said to himself, not noticing Ulquiorra standing right behind him with a change of clothes. The next instant had Noritora buried to his knees in the ground, upside down. It took Noritora's fraction 10 minutes to pull him out of the ground and another 2 hours to remove his weapon from his ass. Taking all bets, I'd say. Zamari goes first, trying to get payback from that Quincy lieutenant, and Noritora gets it the worst from Ichigo by saying something stupid.
Grimjo said, throwing a few coins on the table. Jin kept his smile and threw in some coins himself. I think you'll go down first fighting Ichigo, but Sale will go out the worst because he'll describe an experiment he plans to do.
What is going on here?
Aizen asked, walking up to Jin, Grimjo, Yami, and Barrigan all sitting around a table covered in coins.
We're making bets on which of the Espada will get killed first and which dies in the worst way. Yami said before throwing his coins in. Noritora for both. He'll lose, but I'm betting Eren eats him for power before anyone else kicks it. I'll take that action.
Aizen said, putting down a single coin.
Sale will die first, but the most horrific won't be an Espada.
He said, earning a glance from his allies. If he fails, he will definitely die in the worst manner.
Chapter 69, First Battles. Squad 1 Barracks, Captain's Office. Yamamoto was in his office, drinking tea and going over battle strategies.
It was a given that Aizen would bring his Hogyoku with him and that it would make him stronger.
The obvious solution would be to strike him with overwhelming force, like Zaraki and Unohana working together.
Something both made clear would never happen again after they double-teamed Ichigo. Another possibility would be for Urahara to fight him with Tensai and Yoruchi as backup with him using his Hogyoku, but he stated that he himself is unable to use it. The final readily available option would be for him to crush Aizen personally, but he'd probably have something ready to counteract the captain commander. On top of that, almost everyone that could fight him could easily be trapped by Kyoka Suigetsu. That only left holding off that madman until Ichigo returned from Hueco Mundo, not even considering the possibility that his student was wrong and Aizen did have something that could kill him. He was soon brought out of his musings as a garganta opened in front of his desk, a small part of him hoping that Ichigo made the smart decision by returning, but was not too upset when his student didn't return.
Ichigo, you better come back soon.
The old dragon grumbled to himself as 3 cloaked figures appeared before him, 2 Arrancar and 1 Shinigami. Listen, while you 3, you'd best explain yourselves before I remove you from here. The Soul Reaper stepped forward, almost as if he was unsure of where he was. Captain Commander, sir, the man said as he slowly regained his confidence, Ashido Kano finally reporting back in.
After 3 centuries of being MIA in Hueco Mundo.
That struck a chord with the old commander, of being told that a team of Soul Reapers followed a group of retreating hollows through the portal they used. Attempts at rescue were made, but they never really managed to open their own Garganta, as the Research and Development Institute was not even a thought in anyone's mind yet. Within the first week of entering Hueco Mundo, my entire team was slain after being swarmed and exhausted. I spent centuries killing as many hollows as I could in an attempt to quell their numbers, only to meet with failure after Aizen took control. This year I met with the 2 Arrancar you see behind me, and we came across 4th Seat Ichigo Kurosaki, who ordered me to return to Soul Society.
I see. Yamamoto said, processing the information.
A Soul Reaper that seemed on friendly terms with Arrancar, and that same Soul Reaper having centuries of survival and combat training under his belt. Surprise additions, but not sure how useful at this point in time.
Did Kurosaki have anything else to add? Just that I should resign and become a teacher, and to give you this.
Kano said, offering up the letter Ichigo gave him earlier.
Genryosai took the paper, and sure enough, it was Ichigo's handwork.
All those calligraphy lessons ensured the man would memorize his particular writing. It said the same thing that Ashido said in the reasons why he should teach a survival and hollow combat course, but also that the Arrancar Yin and Yang offer more credibility to Plan 16.
If I may ask, sir, what is this Plan 16? A squad within Hueco Mundo itself, Yamamoto responded, writing down orders on a new sheet of paper, one made up of Arrancar. The trio gasped in surprise as Yama gave Ashido the paper.
Urahara proved the possibility of non-Shinigami being capable of purifying souls like Soul Reapers with a few Quincy, so there may be a possibility with Arrancar since they are supposed to be similar to Shinigami. To really test this, however, we needed test subjects. Something we've been unable to gather because we needed to focus on the war with Aizen. But with Ichigo and Hueco Mundo, and if Hollows truly respect and obey power, then I imagine we'll have plenty of volunteers for the future squad. Now go, I have more pressing matters to attend to. He ordered, making the trio move as they went to find a guide to the SRDI, where Urahara was now waiting for them. With Ichigo's group. Well, I can't say that I'm too surprised. Yuria said as the group came upon a room with 5 separate paths. Just really annoyed. 5 paths and 9 of us, Basby pointed out as the group scanned the doors. If we had one more, that would make this much simpler. We could just form pairs and go on from there. I'll be the one to go alone, Rukia said, already picking out her door. No offense, but I'm still not ready to trust any member of the Vandenrake. She sent a small glare at her supposed allies, who had to concede that she made a smart choice on that. I'm heading forward alone as well, Ichigo declared, killing any protests before they began when his Ryatsu took visible form around him. I'm not stopping or slowing. Understandable, Yuryu conceded. Basby, you're with me. The Heat shrugged as he went to Yuria's side. Sure you're alright with the enemy? He asked, almost curious on the other Quincy's stance. The moment you turn on us, I'll kill you, the teen responded with no hesitation. That's simple. I guess that leaves the 4 of us ladies and the big guy over there, Bambietta said, pointing to Chad. The same Chad that was already at his door and waiting for the signal to go. And he doesn't want to pair up either. That's okay, Oraheim said with a smile, we'll be a group of 4. The female Sternritters joined the martial artist and the exorcist at their path. So which one takes us out if we turn on you? Candace asked, positive that the 2 didn't stand a chance. Tatsuki cracked her knuckles and gave a scowl that would impress Ichigo. Guess, she said as the team got ready to charge forward. But not before Ichigo gave one last reminder of their goals. Fight to win. They get one chance to live, and if they reject the offer, then they die. He dispelled his Ryatsu as the silence signal that prompted everyone to run forward, ready to face the challenges of Las Noches. With Ichigo, the hybrid charged down his chosen path, neglecting to use any of his speed techniques out of concern he may go past some random door that would lead him to either Aizen or his sisters. As he ran, he became aware of the Arrancar that was following him from above. Not as strong as Grimjaw when they first fought, but still strong for an Arrancar. He stopped running to let the Arrancar speak his piece and said Arrancar did come down, after tripping and falling in front of him. Would you like a do-over? Ichigo asked, not quite fazed after dealing with the colorful characters in his life. The Arrancar rose up, covered in dust, and pointed at Ichigo through the smoke. There's no need, he said with a thick Spanish accent. I am dash. He then started coughing after inhaling some of the dust cloud. After he finished posing and coughing, he was finally revealed. Black hair with stylized horns with a mask headband with similar horns, a Van Dyke-style mustache and goatee. His outfit was the standard white, but he had shoulder pads in his shirt with fringes on his sleeves and a red sash on his waist. I am Dordoni Alessandro del Sacacio, Arrancar 103, and I will defeat you, Ichigo Kurosaki, he declared, gaining no reaction from the hybrid. What's with the number? Ichigo asked, knowing better than to judge by appearances. All we have on the Arrancar is that the Espada are ranked by power and the rest are in the order that they were created. I honestly doubt that there are over 100 successful Arrancar in Hueco Mundo. All of which is true, Nino, Dordoni admitted, continuing with the extravagant movements. However, those of 3 digits are known as the Privaron Espada. Having lost our place among the current Espada, we are under them in strength, he said, finally settling into a combat stance similar to Sabat. Though, I must admit that I am defying orders right now, challenging you, Ichigo. The hybrid raised an eyebrow as the Arrancar continued.
Lord Aizen made it clear that only those of rank 5 and on of the current Espada are to fight you. So you're challenging me in hopes of proving yourself and taking back your place among the Espada? Ichigo guessed, not even going for Zangetsu.
I hope you understand why I won't be using my full power in this.
If Aizen is concerned about you, you must indeed be incredibly powerful.
Dordoni returned, already behind Ichigo with a kick ready. That kick was stopped when Ichigo caught his ankle and slammed him into the ground before throwing him further down the corridor. Dordoni tumbled for a bit before getting back on his feet, with Ichigo right in front of him. The Arrancar jumped back and got back into his stance.
Not going to release your resurrection?
Ichigo asked before dashing forward too fast for Dordoni to retaliate and punched him through the wall and into another room.
I understand.
Proving your strength or gaining more strength by fighting with a handicap is something I've done often. But if you're only doing this fight to take back your place as an Espada, then go all out and prove to me you are worthy of that rank.
Dordoni forced himself to his feet and glared at the hybrid. After I kill Aizen, I'm going to need my own court of Espada.
Ichigo said, surprising the former Espada.
What do you mean, Niño?
Dordoni asked, completely shocked. When Aizen is dead at my feet, I will claim the throne of Las Noches.
Ichigo clarified. After doing so I will need my own court of Espada. Even now, Soul Society is experimenting with the possibility of creating a squad comprised of Arrancar.
Their duties would be to monitor Minos Grande and hunt down any extremely dangerous hollows that flee to Hueco Mundo. As he spoke, Dordoni was filled with a mix of disgust but also curiosity. If he took the deal, he'd be at the top again, but was he willing to whore himself in such a manner? Was the kid someone he'd follow? Know this, Dordoni, I've been taking this fight seriously from the beginning. Ichigo said, earning a look from the Arrancar. Just because you haven't seen me release my Shurkai, doesn't mean I'm holding back.
I've been on guard since the moment I entered Las Noches.
So show me your power and prove to me you are worthy.
Don't underestimate me, Niño.
Dordoni said, resting his hand on his sword hilt.
Show me why you should be my king.
Whirl, Giralda. He called out, creating a tornado around himself before being revealed. He had horns on his shoulders and armored calves that had small exhaust horns that generated his controlled wind. He sent bird-headed serpents made of wind at the hybrid, only for them to disintegrate as soon as they got close to Ichigo and a crushing pressure slammed him into the ground. Dordoni struggled to get up but he could not even get air into his lungs as Ichigo slowly walked up to him. Just as he was about to pass out, the pressure released and he collapsed, gasping for breath.
You get the point, I win.
Ichigo said, helping Dordoni back up. As the Arrancar got to his feet, he threw a knee at Ichigo which the hybrid caught.
If you want to convince me that kindness toward my enemy should be cast aside, I only consider Aizen my enemy here. Ichigo opened a garganta. Now, do you take my deal or no? Dordoni looked down the empty chasm, then back to Ichigo.
He thought back to when he was in Espada kneeling before Aizen, and felt that somewhere along the line he would eventually be kneeling before Ichigo in much the same way.
In Hueco Mundo, the strong reign supreme.
And this Niño, no, this king would truly deliver the promise of a new future.
I await your command, Mirai.
He said before going through the portal. With his business here done, Ichigo continued his run deeper into Las Noches. With the girls, the quartet were making their way through their chosen path, not talking but watching their surroundings and each other. Tatsuki and Oraheim were made aware that they were allies for now but also of the Quincy army that would eventually come as their enemies. Yuryu himself told them that the Sternritters are rebelling against Yawatch out of personal interest and just like the Quincy/Soul Reaper himself, they had to be ready to end them if they become enemies. The Sternritter ladies themselves were also aware of their gaze and were unwilling to do anything that would eventually jeopardize their future survival. They reached the end of the corridor and into a room full of columns with a spinning disc coming down at them. They managed to dodge that but then they were almost crushed by two giant tentacles each. After avoiding those, they all settled on top of a separate column to get a look at their opponents. A girl in a white frilly gothic Lolita outfit with wings, her mask resembling a spiked hairpin in her purple hair, and purple teardrop tattoos on her cheeks. The other was Luppy, already in his resurrection state that seemed roughly patched together.
Looks like you were too slow, Luppy,
the female Arrancar said, bringing the disc of her weapon to her side.
Shut up, you bitch, Luppy growled back, glaring at Tatsuki.
There's only one person here I want to kill, so bother yourself with the rest, Surachi. Piss off, you dash, the now named Surachi was saying before noticing Candace in front of her.
You got dirt on me, you bitch.
The thunder growled before unleashing several million volts of electricity into the Arrancar, filling the room with unearthly screams of agony.
Luppy himself was shocked by the sudden attack on his ally. You should really pay attention to your own fight,
he heard Bambietta say as balls of Racier sank into his clothes and resurrection limbs.
It could be over in a flash,
she quipped before a tentacle began popping like firecrackers.
His screams of agony almost drowned out Bambietta as she continued. Or one could enjoy the fireworks show,
she said as another tentacle blew up in a set of larger explosions. The Arrancar lost his footing and fell to the ground, another explosion on his back stopping him from slamming into the ground from the fall and causing more damage. Bambietta had to choke down the sadistic pleasure she was deriving from this. Despite knowing this was their enemy, she still wanted to be a better person. She decided to finish it with one last explosion that engulfed him and barely left him conscious.
I'm done here. What about you, Candy?
She asked her fellow Quincy, who was holding a charred and unconscious Surachi.
I've been done, the thunder said, dropping by the explode while Oraheim and Tatsuki joined them. She's still alive, I think.
Candy hates it when her look is damaged in the slightest. Bambietta explains, setting the Arrancar next to each other, Oraheim covering them in her healing field.
Don't bother with Luppy, Oraheim,
Tatsuki said, doing something that Ichigo and Yoruchi always advised her in battle.
Trust her instincts. I've got a bad feeling that he'll just try to stab us in the back. How does that power work anyway?
Bambietta asked, knowing that they shouldn't kill Luppy after she touched him with her rapier and, by extension, Yawacha's rapier. It would only make the man stronger in the end. I can reject certain events or factors within the boundaries of the Soten Kisun,
Oraheim explained. Can you reject my rapier inside his body? Oraheim looked at the Quincy and considered it while listening to Shuno and Iam explain the possibility. I'll try.
Oraheim closed her eyes as she focused on her task, resulting in Bambietta feeling the disconnect of her bombs on him.
Any luck? Yeah. Now do we kill him or leave him?
She asked as Tatsuki dropped a flaming axe kick that created a towering geyser of flame. It apparently woke Luppy, if the hellish screams were any indication, as his body was quickly burnt away into ash, moments before Surachi herself woke up.
What's going on?
She asked, slowly getting more startled and pissed.
What's happening?
She sat up and was met with a blade to her face.
Here's the abridged version, Bambi said, keeping the blade pointed at the Arrancar's neck. We spared you to give you this one-time offer. Join us or die. Ichigo will become the future king of Hueco Mundo and he'll need a new court of Espada. This is your one chance.
She shot a ball at Surachi's chest that sank into her but was shortly dispelled by Oraheim's barrier.
If you say yes, that is incentive to make sure you behave. Otherwise.
She shot another ball at another pillar, causing it to explode magnificently and getting the point across to the Arrancar.
Well. Surachi glared at her captors, not seeing a way out. Fine, I'll join,
she growled out reluctantly.
As Oraheim continued to heal the Arrancar, Candace noticed that Tatsuki was away from the group.
She went to the tomboy's side and saw the puddle of sick that Tatsuki made, just as she released another stream of vomit.
Don't ever let it get easy,
Candace said, patting the martial artist's back.
When that happens, you stop being a person. You don't recognize the thing you see in the mirror. It's something else, something you'll never forgive yourself for being. Tatsuki let out a few final coughs as her stomach settled. I'll keep that in mind,
Tatsuki said as the group got together, Surachi now joining with them.
Let's go,
she said as they continued their charge.
With Chad.
Chad made his way deeper into Las Noches until he came upon a dimly lit room, the only source of light coming from a series of evenly spaced square holes in the ground giving off a faint blue light. Standing on the other side of the room was an Arrancar with a large orange afro and a form-fitting white outfit that exposed his chest down to his navel with large frills on the collar and thighs, with his mask fragment resting on his forehead like sunglasses with a star in the middle.
Chad stopped running and stood across from the Arrancar.
Yasutora Sato, 4th seat of Squad 15.
The Foolbringer said to the Arrancar.
He nodded and got into a fighting stance, which Chad soon did as well.
Gantenbane Mosqueda, number 107. Let's have a fair fight,
he said before the two charged at each other, Gantenbane with Sonito and Chad with Bringer Light, and began exchanging blows,
each side trying to gain the upper hand in the bout of fisticuffs.
At the moment, it was pure martial arts and continued with that until they jumped away from each other. The Arrancar brought out his punch daggers that were attached to his wristbands while Chad activated his full bring. They charged at each other once more and threw the first serious punch, resulting in Chad's energy blast blowing the Arrancar through the wall and into the next room. He readied his shield arm and entered the next room.
Tell me something,
he said as he entered the room to find Gantenbane in an armadillo-like shell that covered his arms, and he was charging an attack. Chad brought his shield in front of him as the blast hit him, digging his feet into the ground to avoid being completely blasted away. During that blast, he gauged the strength of the attack and threw it aside. The look of shock on Gantenbane's face was enough to give him a window to speak.
My friend, Ichigo Kurosaki, is going to conquer Las Noches.
When he does, he'll be needing a new Court of Espada,
he offered, surprising Gantenbane.
Once that wore off, he pondered the offer.
On one condition, Yasutora Sato,
the Arrancar said, making his decision.
I will fire my strongest attack at you. If you manage to block it, then I'll side with you.
I'm not without honor, and I only want to fight on the same level as my opponents, and I feel you've been holding back. I'll take that bet, but I must correct you, Chad said, bracing himself for the attack. My power, Fullbring, is a constantly evolving power.
If there is another level to it, we have yet to truly awaken it.
So I constantly give every fight my all until I do awaken that next level. He then gestured Gantenbane to make his attack, to which the Arrancar nodded. He brought his dragon maw fists together and began to charge his attack, pouring almost all of his energy into it.
Ruger del Dragon,
he roared before firing, the energy taking the form of a Chinese dragon. The energy slammed into Chad, pushing him back by an inch as he readied his left arm. Once his left arm was charged, he reached out and grabbed onto the blast before crushing it in his hand.
Gantenbane was gasping for breath. Chad stood strong as he walked over to the Arrancar. My loyalty to the next king of Hueco Mundo,
he said as he knelt before the man. Chad held his own hand out for the Arrancar, who took it and stood back up on shaky feet. Sato then stopped, sensing someone coming from behind, before blowing a hole through the wall and dashing through it with Gantenbane struggling to follow.
This guy is much stronger,
he thought, referring to the Arrancar that was currently following him.
With Rukia
activated her Shirkai as soon as the group separated, choosing to be proactive rather than reactive in the case that she comes across an enemy. Soon she found herself in what appeared to be outside of the giant fortress, with a sunlight-bright sky with clouds and a spanning town beneath her.
Did Aizen create his own sky within Las Noches? Rukia wondered, going the only direction left to her, forward on the narrow walkway.
She heard someone appear behind her and speak in a high-pitched, childish voice.
Would you like me to explain it to you?
She turned her head to nothing before continuing down her path, where a figure in white appeared.
Come with me,
it said in a dark, heavy tone, completely unlike the earlier voice. Preparing herself for battle, Rukia followed the being into the building that her path led her toward. Once inside, she was trapped in darkness before a dim lighting came up to offer some visual in the room.
A greenish blue was the predominant color, with the walls being cylinders stacked side to side. Good, I can finally relax now,
she heard it speak, turning to finally see the figure for herself standing on the level above her.
Sorry, but I simply cannot stand the sunlight out there.
It does not reach inside the palace. It wore a dress that covered its entire body, with a noble's jacket that had a large frilly collar.
The most defining feature of the Arrancar would have to be its head, a symmetrical cylinder with 4 holes on each side. "Allow me to take off my mask and greet you properly,"
it said in that childish tone again as a hand rose to the bottom of its mask. That's when its tone changed again, this time to something all too familiar to her.
"My name is Aranjero,"
he said, revealing a face very much like Ichigo's but with black hair. The face of her former mentor.
"Kaien Shiba. Aranjero Ararori, Arrancar number 101.
He just gazed down at Rukia while the girl tried to process what she was seeing.
"Is that really you?"
she asked, telling herself that Kaien couldn't be here, that she killed him long ago. The words of her husband ringing in her head that she had to consider everyone here an enemy, that they would try anything to kill them. And psychological warfare was a specialty of Aizen's.
"It's good to see you again, Rukia Kuchiki," the man said as he dropped down. Rukia took a moment to steel herself and focus, listening to her instincts. "Hey, what's with that look on your face?" the man demanded. "Aren't you glad your beloved Kaien Shiba is alive and well?" he said, looking annoyed at the doubt on the current lieutenant's face.
"He can definitely pass for Lieutenant Shiba, I'll give him that much," Rukia thought to herself while Shirayuki spoke to her.
"Do not be fooled, Lady Rukia. Even for a trap, why would Lord Kaien side with Aizen without trying to contact you the moment you came into Las Noches?" the Zanpakuto said to her master.
"Right. Chances are that this is an illusion that he uses to disguise himself,"
the ice user thought, examining her surroundings.
"He wanted us to get out of the sunlight, so that must make him vulnerable."
"I have an idea."
She slowly walked towards her mentor, reaching out with one hand.
"Lieutenant Shiba, how is this possible?" Kaien walked toward the girl, slowly closing the gap.
"Easy Kuchiki, just sit down and I'll dash," he said before noticing a line of frozen air between himself and one of her hands.
"San no mai, Shirafune,"
she said, creating a blade of ice that pierced through Kaien's side and began to spread its frozen touch. He tore himself away from the blade, but the ice still spread. "It was clever to try and disguise yourself as Kaien, but I've long since made my peace with his passing." The man glared at her while the Soul Reaper pointed at him.
"Carriage of thunder, bridge of a spinning wheel. With light, divide this into 6. Bokudo number 63, Rikujikuro," she chanted quickly, trapping him in place. "Some nomai, Tsukishiro."
She drew 2 circles before trapping him in a pillar of ice, but unfrozen. "I guess this is where I offer you the chance to join Ichigo's court when he kills Aizen, but impersonating my mentor is unforgivable." She growled venomously before putting on her hollow mask and shocking the man in front of her. She pointed her blade upward and began charging a Zero. Just as the trapped man broke free of the Kido, Rukia unleashed her blast of energy, destroying the ceiling and the walls, letting light come down all around them. She watched as the face of Kaien Shiba melted away and was replaced by a large glass tube with balls inside, each with a face and hollow mask.
"How stupid are you?"
the darker voice returned.
"If you actually attacked us, you may have hurt us."
The Arrancar blew a hole through the ice as Rukia left the building area.
"Now die, Rukia!"
the child voice screamed as Rukia threw a bala and shattered the hollow side, making it fall. As it began screaming in pain, the other head looked down to see that its initial stab wound was still spreading its ice. "My third dance freezes anything it pierces and all of the surrounding area, eventually," she explained before pointing her blade at him and repeating that technique, stabbing each of his joints. "You lost this fight the moment you thought I was still clinging to my past," she said, leaving the Arrancar to scream in rage and pain as ice slowly consumed it. Until silence remained. With Yuryu and Bazbi, the final 2 Quincy were going down their own path. No words were exchanged as they felt the battles going on around them. Or lack of in some cases, their own being the best example. They felt their allies get into battles but they themselves have yet to encounter anyone. What made Yuryu more uneasy was the sense that hallways were turning. It wasn't what he saw, it was what he felt.
That each hallway turned when they went halfway through it.
The musing was cut when a hole appeared beneath their feet and they fell, the hole closing as they went through it.
Looks like we'll get to see the enemy soon, Yuryu, Basby said as they went down the slide. Think I can fight if you land the killing blow? Instead of giving an answer, Yuryu asked a question. Bazard, what do you feel ahead of us? The teen asked the older Quincy, who took the chance to analyze the various Ryatsu signatures they felt. One that really stands out among a group of weaklings. Why? The Heat responded as they reached the end of the slide. It's what I don't sense that's the problem. Yuryu returned as they hit the ground rolling before readying their bows. Come on, be ready for anything, Yuryu said, slowly becoming horrified by what he saw. What the hell are those? Basby asked as the figures noticed them. All were bone-white with pitch-black skull masks in various states of deformity. Oversized limbs, crooked jaws, extra body parts, gigantic and tiny, but none of that was the worst. Yuryu saw them, but he couldn't sense them. As if they had no souls. The first began to move toward the Quincy and Yuryu immediately shot it between the eyes, something that proved ineffective as it released a blood-curdling screech. Shoot them, Yuryu ordered, switching bows to pure Quincy mode. Shoot them, Bazard. I can't sense their souls. Basby immediately brought out his crossbow and began shooting, his shots proving just as ineffective. Once the abominations closed in, they jumped away. Initially using Hirenkyaku, but the rapier became too thin to use and settled for blood-enhanced jumps. The hollows kept chasing them around, trying to eat the Quincy, as Yuryu tried to come up with a plan. Any bright ideas? Basby yelled out as one of the deformed hollows almost bit him, making the Quincy slam his fist into the creature's face and sending it back. Well, that worked, he said as he and Yuryu watched the creature regenerate and continue attack. Okay, how is that fair? He complained as the two noticed all the rapier in the area was being absorbed into the hollows. Well, we know they're immune to rapier attacks but not physical, Yuryu surmised as they continued to dodge. Think your Heat can handle this? He asked as they got back to back. I'll need more rapier than what's in this room, he responded as the freaks got closer. Think you can punch through the ceiling? Yuryu asked, both Quincy activating their blood venae and artery. You might as well find out, he said as the hollows swarmed the two, the pair barely managing to get any breathing room. Basby eventually jumped off the ground and sprang off one of the hollows' heads to reach the ceiling. He buried his fists into the stone and began to tear through it as fast as he could. Yuryu, being left on his own, was currently very grateful that Yoruchi was so insistent that he take up martial arts. And the kickings he received in his training gave him the endurance to power through while hollows dug their teeth into his flesh. Basby punched his way through to an area outside of the hollow's absorption range and activated his script. Burner Finger 3. He called out, reducing the stone structure to melt into lava. The molten rock poured on top of the hollows, burning them away faster than they could heal. With more rapier, Basby quickly dived down to grab Yuryu before filling the room with his most intense heat. The white abominations were destroyed and Basby got Yuryu out of that room as fast as he could. He set the teen down as his veins began bulging, the weakness against hollows coming to haunt the Quincy. Yuryu, on the other hand, pulled out a silver tin with small black capsules. He tapped one, which was absorbed into him, and soon the hollowification faded. Prototype medicine for hollowification that Urahara was working on, Yuryu quickly explained. Never thought I'd get that desperate. And most fascinating, they heard someone say. They turned to see a man in glasses with pink hair, dressed like a scientist, walking toward them. Sorry I couldn't entertain you personally, but I wanted to study your and the other Quincy's abilities. Nice to see my suspicions were correct on how to counter your kind though. Who are you and what were those things? Yuryu growled, pushing himself back to his feet as Basby got ready for another fight. The Arankar bowed in an over-the-top gesture. I am the ninth Espada, Saelaporograns, he answered, before looking them in the eye. And what you were fighting were Lord Aizen's failures. Failures? Bazard asked, wondering how such pains were only failures.
Yes, Ichigo Kurosaki does warrant a good amount of concern.
The Espada continued. Enough that Lord Aizen would like to have something ready to kill him.
That left a bad feeling in the Quincy, as Sailaparo gave heavy hints that there was a successful monster ready to devour Ichigo.
I feel alright with telling you this, since you won't be leaving here alive. They all dropped into another room, with the Arrancar unsheathing his blade. I have all the data I need to kill you.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Chad's greatest obstacle. This is bad, I don't know if I can win this. Chad thought while looking at his opponent, Gantenbane. How can I beat him? He's got an afro. Chapter 70, Madness Crushed. With Aizen.
So, Ichigo plans to take my army for himself. Aizen thought as he watched the progress of his intruders. He can have Hueco Mundo, but only after I take the throne of the Soul King. A little surprising that he has that Hayori though. The scans he was able to get on Ichigo's cloak showed that it was far different from the usual captain's Hayori. There was a power in it that seemed to resonate. His hand reached to his chest as his scar began to throb, as it had ever since Ichigo came to Hueco Mundo. A part of the traitor wanted to put it out of his mind, but he knew that it would never end. Not until he killed Ichigo himself. In a way he was proud of Ichigo, truly his greatest successful experiment, but he wanted the boy dead. The greatest threat to his ambitions was not the other captains, it was the single hybrid. It looks like Aranyaro's dead and most of the Privaron chose to follow our favorite Strawberry. Jin said, watching from the doorway to the monitoring room. What to do now? The former 5th Division captain turned to his right and left hands, Tosen following along. Aizen calmly took a sip of his tea. Have the top 3 Espada ready to move out. He answered, looking his 2 longest serving agents. Once Ulquiorra fights, we move out. The 2 nodded and began to go in separate directions. Jin. Aizen called out, gaining the man's attention once again. What are you planning? I recognized that smirk. The fox's smile widened as he opened one of his piercing eyes. Just a quick little trip to remind our dear Ichigo that I know how to hurt him. He said before disappearing with Shuunpa. With Yuryu and Basbi? As soon as Sailaparo said that he had enough data, the room was filled with his fraction, many Arrancar that seemed either incomplete or failed to become humanoid, that began to assault the 2 Quincy. Sail just watched as the 2 struggled against his army, knowing that the Quincy were at a disadvantage in the room they currently occupied. He had a device that could disrupt the Quincy ability to manipulate the ambient Racier and surrounded them with stone that absorbed the remaining Racier, negating their main skill of Racier manipulation. It was only their own reserves that kept the Quincy going, channeling the power through their veins. Basbi was barely hanging on, not used to fighting in the absence of Racier. Yuryu was faring much better, due to his training with Ichigo and the new Quincy style of drawing Racier, had plenty of his own and even managed to use a Seelschneider. He seems to be doing much better than I expected. Sail muttered to himself, not really able to do anything about the Racier inside a person until he could get in close himself. It's not like I'll run out of fraction. One of his larger servants slammed a fist into Bazard while Yuria slashed one in half, his Seelschneider, which before to solidify his Yuria got better at controlling it mid-battle. Perhaps I'll fix that anyway. Sip, for Nikuras. He calmly said as Yuria saved Basbi from another attack. This is quite the embarrassing oversight for the Quincy. The stern Ritter admitted as the 2 stood back to back. To learn we could become so vulnerable so easily. You'd think that someone in the Vandenrake would suggest being able to fight in a place where one couldn't harness Racier. Yuria panted out. I'm starting to run out of my own. How many more are out there? Irrelevant for you. They heard Sailaparo say before some weird gray tentacles with a set of big red pouches wrapped around the pair. After the thing undulated for a bit, it spat out the 2 Quincy while the fraction cheered that the battle is over. The 2 looked over to see Sailaparo, now in a multi-layered skirt with baggy sleeves that had purple extensions while his torso was a segmented gray garment with 4 of the tentacles that attacked them earlier coming out of his back. One of the red extensions on his odd wings began to inflate over his hand before bursting and revealing a small chibi doll of Yuryu before repeating and getting one of Basby. I'd prefer to play around with you longer, but I don't want to keep patching up my fraction.
Too much work. I'll end this now.
The two Quincy pushed themselves up and Bazard flinched when he felt something poke his head.
Are those things voodoo dolls or something?
He asked, noticing Sale pressing a thumb against his doll's head.
Pretty observant of you. The ninth Espada complimented.
Indeed, these dolls are now you.
Whatever I do to them, will happen to you, he said before flicking Basby's head, knocking his own back. But the real fun is inside, he said before opening up Yuryu's doll.
All these colorful little bits, like shells or marbles, these are your organs and muscles. He held up a few thin needle-like bits.
Observe. He snapped them all in rapid succession, causing blood to spurt out of Yuryu's ankles and wrists.
I'd much rather have you more fully intact, but I'll probably be bored of Quincy soon enough. I'd love to dissect that hybrid, but Lord Eisen made it clear he's to be destroyed.
I'll have to entertain myself with studying the bait, he said, making the two Quincy flinch. What do you mean? Basby asked while Yuryu seemed to go into shock.
The Arrancar laughed sadistically as he looked at the stern Ritter. Obviously I mean those two little girls he had stolen from that Squad 15 captain,
he said, looking more and more ecstatic.
Ichigo Kurosaki's little sisters, not as enticing as their brother but present so many more options.
And two of them? What to do? Dissect them, breed more potential hybrids, so many choices to make. I don't even know where to begin.
He started laughing madly, before noticing something. Erasure was gathering, the walls around them breaking apart into the energy, which began flowing to Yuryu.
You,
he growled, glowing with power.
Will not. He stood on his feet, Sail Aparo's fraction disintegrating in much the same manner before the power went to the Quincy. Touch my family, he roared, burning wings of light exploding from his back. With Ichigo.
Ichigo thought as he was keeping track of all of his allies, I know I shouldn't worry.
But I've never felt this power coming from you before.
Be safe, I don't want to even think that you're in trouble. He continued running before sensing a familiar presence down the hall. The hybrid slowed to a stop as the person on the opposite side slowly revealed himself, Grimjaw Jagerjax. I remember being told that only rank 5 and on were allowed to fight me, Ichigo said to the blue-haired Arrancar, who started bearing a savage grin. Judging by that smirk, there was a little rearranging in the ranks of the Espada.
Correct? Had to beat the crap out of the previous 5th to get his title. Grimjaw responded, showing no hostilities to the hybrid that once crushed him.
Didn't help much against that old man of yours, he still slapped me around. But I wanted to save something special for our rematch,
the Espada said, releasing his Ryatsu as he prepared to fight.
Had to come to terms with some things about myself, let go of old desires, all for this chance to fight you again.
Ichigo stood unaffected by the pressure as Grimjaw went on.
I'm ready to give this my all, 100% of my power to destroying you. Ichigo took a moment to crack his neck and knuckles, before sensing something around Rukia. Grimjaw, Ichigo started as he turned his head to where Rukia currently was, let's take this outside.
Try to keep up,
he said before disappearing in a burst of speed, confusing the panther before he noticed what Ichigo felt.
That damn Soul Reaper, he cursed before following. With Rukia.
It wasn't too long after she cut down the imposter Arrancar that tried to shake her resolve, promising herself to visit his grave after all was said and done with Eisen, when she found herself lost in the city within the fortress. Her only other tells were the familiar Ryatsu of her allies, but no trace of the twins. Seeing as everyone started to emerge into the desert city, she figured now would be a good chance to regroup. Ichigo could handle himself, her husband was too competent to let himself die. Probably get back up and more annoyed than anything else. She took one more step before she felt a familiar presence almost over top of her, like a viper ready to bury its fangs into her neck.
Sugi no Mai,
she called out, quickly readying the second dance of her Shurikai. But it was not effective as a pair of hands almost ripped the blade out of her hands from behind her.
My Kuchiki, it has been a while.
She froze, forcing herself to turn and see Jin Ikamaru with her blade in his hands.
And looked at you, a lieutenant now.
You must feel so proud of yourself. He tossed her snow-white blade over the side and flashed right in front of her. Rukia made a lot of progress in her training, but Jin always made her feel weak and helpless. Before he was a soldier of the Gotii, now he was the enemy and had no reason to not kill her. She tried to back away, but he took hold of her shihakusho and held his blade to her. Now, our data is limited ever since we defected, but there were some rumors that you and our favorite hybrid got married.
Do you mind confirming that?
He asked, dragging the edge of his zanpakuto along the skin of her chest.
Shallow enough to sting and draw some blood, not enough to scar just yet. Either way, I wonder how Ichigo would react if you died?
He said so casually they may as well could just be making small talk. The pressure of his blade began to increase to where it cut through to her bones, letting out a screech of pain before it disappeared and she fell to the ground. She opened her eyes to see Ichigo, once again to her rescue. I wonder, what part of you thought it was a good idea to try this where I could find you? Ichigo asked, looking at the man he just buried into the wall. I put a pretty nasty scar on your boss when we first tried to kill each other, and that was after you and Tosin tried to hold me back.
Did you think I was just sitting on my ass this whole time?
Jin slowly pulled himself back to his feet and rubbed his jaw. Well, I just wanted to serve you a little reminder. Jin said, still holding his blade in his hand.
A similar lesson you gave my captain.
That you can still be hurt. He said before his blade shot toward Rukia. She was paralyzed, watching the steel coming for her, before it was stopped in Ichigo's crushing grip. I became aware of that when he had my sisters kidnapped.
Ichigo growled, glowing with power.
Now leave and tell Aizen that when I find him, I'm going to kill him. Jin pulled his blade back and looked deep into Ichigo's eyes. And here I was worried he might be too soft. He thought to himself before brushing off the dust. I'll be sure to do that.
Ciao, Bella. Aha.
He said before disappearing with Shuunpa.
Did he just try to vocalize a period?
Ichigo thought before turning back to Rukia, who was finally able to catch her breath.
You all right, Rukia?
He asked, kneeling down to the petite Shinigami. I'll be fine, just some scratches on my chest. She said, pulling her shihakusho apart to examine her injury. Looks like you managed to get a message to me after all, Jin. He thought, recognizing that the scratches formed a word. Now there was only one thing to figure out. What the hell did Jin mean by Negro? He thought as he read her chest while she healed. Looks like we all came out to this area of Las Noches. He said, gaining Rukia's attention. You'd best go regroup with the others. I've got a score to settle. Grimjow appeared behind Rukia shortly after that. The ice user looked at the espada and back to her husband. I'll be fine, go. He ordered, making her jump off the side to retrieve her sword and begin running off to join the others.
Quick question, does everyone in Hueco Mundo use Spanish?
He asked, surprising Grimjow. Yeah, I guess. The Quinta replied, scratching his head. Why? So that means Jin's real message to me is black, still doesn't tell me much. Just curious. Ichigo replied as the two got ready to fight. With Chad. The Fullbringer and his Arrancar companion kept running as the two behind them followed, closing in more and more with every step. Chad felt ready to go another round, but Gantenbane was drained of his rapier and needed the chance to build it back up. He wanted a bit more time for the two of them, but whoever was behind them threw something at Sato. Sensing the attack, he dodged the large and oddly shaped crescent-bladed weapon and it dug itself into the sand. Just as it was being pulled back, Chad grabbed onto the shaft of the weapon and turned to face his opponents. The Arrancar chasing them was tall and lanky with long black hair with an eye patch covering his left eye, wearing a massive spoon hood with his jacket exposing his chest. With him was someone less bizarrely dressed with an eye patch over his right eye and a turquoise mark on his cheek that had dirty blonde hair. No right, Gilga? Gantenbane said, turning to face their opponent.
Currently Espada number 7.
And you're a traitor. The Espada returned, getting into a tug-of-war match with Chad.
Being too weak to stay in Espada is one thing, but betraying Lord Aizen is another.
He growled, pulling himself and Sato closer together. Tessera, kill him. He ordered, making his Fraction unsheath his blade and flash in front of the Privaron.
Nope.
They heard someone call out as a ball of fire slammed into the Arrancar, sending him into the chain of Naritra's weapon. The collision created a small amount of slack that Chad used to slam the axe-like weapon into the Espada and sent him flying back. The Fullbringer spared a glance to the side to see Tatsuki showing up.
Chad, we're regrouping. Rukia showed up and told us to find Yuryu. You two aren't going anywhere.
They heard Naritra growl as he rose back to his feet. The only place you're going is the grave.
He roared out, releasing his Ryatsu.
With Yuryu? Well, what the hell is this? Sailaparo asked as his anti-Quincy room disintegrated around him, his Fraction breaking apart into erasure, all of which gathered to the winged Quincy glaring at him.
That's enough out of you.
He yelled, pulling out some more of Yuryu's voodoo organs and crushed them. Blood spurted from the Quincy's mouth and he staggered, but he still stood strong and never stopped glaring at the scientist.
I don't believe it.
Bazard thought as he watched Yuryu absorbing more and more erasure.
Is he doing this subconsciously? Reizo Tengai inside his body? Is he reconstructing his body completely blind as it gets wrecked by this creep?
His eyes widened as the burning light on Yuryu's back slowly solidified into archangel wings.
Die! Why won't you die? Sailaparo yelled out desperately as even his Resurrection began to get absorbed. Yuryu did not say anything as he pointed his wings to the Espada and gave his death sentence. Licked Regan.
He said. The feathers in his wings shot toward Sailaparo. Each one was like a seal schneider as the blades tore him apart. Basby watched in disturbed awe as Yuryu mercilessly destroyed the Espada. The only thing out of place was small tendril that touched Yuryu before being converted into erasure. When he ended his assault, Sailaparo was barely more than a torso and head.
What was that? He spoke, feeling that his life was slowly ending. He activated his Volstandig. Basby answered as Yuryu released the glowing and collapsed, still alive but in rather critical condition.
And he still manages to hold himself together.
That kid is scary in his own right.
He thought as he noted the mix of Blut and Reizo Tengai.
You can think of it as the Quincy's Resurrection, or Bankai.
But how? That room should have completely cancelled erasure manipulation. The Novino coughed out, the blood draining faster and faster. And it did, but he managed to use the greatest of manipulation skills.
The Heat replied, walking over to the Arrancar scientist. Sclaverai. He didn't just take it, he enslaved it.
All the erasure around him became a slave to his will. So powerful that it tears apart the bodies of spiritual beings. So whatever trap you tried to pull on him as he tore you apart was doomed to fail. Your freaky little tentacle became his ammo the moment it touched him. The Arrancar managed to glare at the Heat and let out a defiant roar as another massive tentacle appeared behind the stern Ritter, disguising the other small one making its way to his leg. The Heat lived up to his script as he created a scorching shell around him that reduced the attacks to nothing. And your room is gone, so I'm free to use my abilities, he said as he went back over to Yuryu and gently lifted him up. Enjoy your last moments. I think a slow death is fitting for one like you. Too bad we can't prolong it. Bazard Black then disappeared from the area, leaving behind the dying Arrancar. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
If you can understand, know this.
You keep bugging me about them, and I'll block you.
Ishin's first mission as captain of Squad 15, set between the establishment of the squad and memories of a nobody.
So, this is the place. Ishin thought to himself, looking at the tall and imposing mansion. He received recent orders about a group of powerful individuals that was a black stain on Soul Society's history, which led to a mishap that had affected the world of the living but making them essentially soul-sucking vampires. It was thought that they were wiped out by the Quincy some time ago, but the remnants had gathered here in an old mansion in Karakura town.
Alright, let's do this and be done with it.
he said before disappearing with Shuunpa.
Inside the mansion,
Jean Korea, leader of the Bounce, looked over his assembled brethren. The last of their kind in his army in their mission of vengeance, but there were a few more components missing. His ex-wife, Yoshino, the cornerstone of their eve of power, was being retrieved by his loyal Shinigami champion. Soon, he would have all he needs to attack the Soul Society, and make them pay for their mistakes.
"Hi there,"
he heard someone say, turning to come face to face with Isshin Kurosaki.
"Who are Dash?" Jean asked before Isshin cut him across his chest, killing the Bout instantly.
The others tried to respond, but the captain was too quick. Next was an elderly man that Isshin killed by twisted his neck until the bones snapped apart. He turned to his next target as a swarm of snakes lashed out to bite him.
"Heido number 33, Sokatsui."
Isshin cast calmly, pointing with his fingers and unleashing a massive torrent of flames and leaving a charred corpse. He felt something land on his back and begin to possess him. He retaliated by stabbing himself through the chest and whatever was invading him, the sounds of a man screaming giving some indication that he succeeded. He flashed back to the door and pulled his blade out to heal himself.
"Let's see, 5 left,"
he thought as the sounds of crashing alerted him to something heading his way through the floors. He dashed to a man, desperately moving cards around as a large ball and chain burst out of the ground. It stopped when Isshin grabbed the man by the head and kneed him so hard his skull exploded. A woman with a Chinese shirt managed to pull out a sword and fan while 2 kids were standing behind 2 stalks of water globes. He threw his Zanpakuto into the chest of the woman before flashing to the hilt and ripping it out of her chest. He spun and released his Injutsu while releasing a torrent of flames so hot the water evaporated. Whatever else got hit signified the twins' death as they withered away in front of him.
That only left 1 Bout remaining.
A large man with an orange mohawk and red hair.
"Are you hesitating?"
he asked as Isshin studied the man.
"Wondering why you're not trying to fight now?"
the captain replied.
"I know when I'm outmatched. And when my fate is looking me in the face,"
the Bout answered, holding up the metal ball that was his power but doing nothing with it.
"I thank you for at least making it quick with some of them. Are you truly the final Bout?"
Isshin asked, wanting to be sure in this mission.
"Should be 1 other left, a woman by the name of Yoshino,"
he answered, just as a Soul Reaper came in with a beautiful woman. "What the dash?" the Shinigami asked, seeing not by empty clothes and bloodstains of his dead comrades. His eyes fell to Isshin and his captain's Hayori with rage in his eyes.
"You bast dash."
He tried before Isshin disappeared from his sight and felt his strength leave him, blood pouring from his chest from 2 lethal stab wounds. The woman, Yoshino, gaped in shock at the speed and ruthlessness Isshin used and understood just as much this was the end. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry to do this," Isshin said, earning an understanding nod from Koga.
Neither Bout had time to say anything before Isshin cut through their skulls, destroying their brains.
That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers to Save His Mother.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned.
Quick reminder.
What If Natsu Had Dual Elements will be going on hold soon, since we've nearly caught up with the author. I'd love to do another poll to decide our next project, but unfortunately, due to my travel plans, I won't be able to start a new series until the end of December if we go that route. So instead, I've decided that the series which came in second place in the last poll will be our next project. That means the series replacing What If Natsu Had Dual Elements will be What If Transmigrated into One Piece and Became a Marine? Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.